Welcome to Tales from SYL Ranch Live, where everyone is entitled to my opinion, and I'm Bill Stone. And tonight on Tales from SYL Ranch, we will have, as usual, live call-ins via Skype about any time that you want. We'll have the weekly Lancaster County, Nebraska virus statistics. Talk about updates for Civil War II. Have a review of the last episode of the season for Star Trek Lower Decks, which is entitled No Small Parts. We'll talk about the impact of permanent mental illness among leftists and how the press fuels every single thing that is negative in the United States. And tacked on to the end of that is the current new Obama-Biden-Clinton scandal as a result of some declassified documents. Now, this is a live stream, so even if I'm not able to get to you via Skype, you can talk to me in chat all that you want, and you're free to ask me anything at all. You can talk to me about something that's political, social, the virus whose name I cannot mention without YouTube ranking my videos and channel even lower than it already does, the United States Civil War II, or even things pertaining to science fiction, fantasy, superheroes, and other related genres. I'm happy to answer each and every question in as much detail as I can and as truthfully as I can. Now, there are some personal issues that I won't discuss, but pretty much anything else is fair game. I'll get to as many viewers as I can with the understanding that I don't really want the stream to go much more than 3 hours because I have lower back arthritis, and sitting like this for that period of time kind of screws me up. Now, if you'd like to call into the show, I'm doing it via Skype, and since I don't want to give out my Skype information in public, I'd like to handle it this way. If you're interested in being on the show, send me an email to callin@sylranch.tv. Give me your Skype information. I'll Skype you back. You'll then be free to talk with me about anything that you want. You can agree with me, disagree with me, go off on a tangent. I don't care. So again, if you're interested in talking with me directly, send me an email to callin@sylranch.tv. Give me your Skype information, and I'll Skype you. And that email address again is callin@sylranch.tv. So, I'm about to get off, just wait for a few more people to come in. If someone in chat, because I see I've got one viewer anyway, if you're in chat there, if you just do me a favor and give me an ACK, you just, type anything to let me know that you're actually in there. A couple of weeks ago I had problems with the chat feature, and I want to make sure that it isn't happening again. So if you could just shoot me an acknowledgement that you're hearing me and you're there. If I don't see something within the next couple of minutes or so, I'll start fiddling with things. So, now we have the answer to the question that no one asked. What is the state of the virus that I can't mention in Lancaster County, Nebraska, where I live? Well, the source for this, as always, is the Nebraska Department of Health and Human Services. I have their website linked to below. It's a really good website. You can do things like go in there and take a look at every single county in Nebraska, get specific information about the last 14 days. I suggest that you do what I do, which is the total number of them that's problematic. So, as always, the total Lancaster County population remains about the same at 319,090. Probably a little more than that. That was the last census, and people born and die all the time. The total Lancaster County tests that have been administered is 78,320, which is up a couple of thousand from last week. This, by the way, the number of those tests represents about 24.545% of our population. So about a quarter of our population has been tested. The total Lancaster County positive tests is 6,905, and that is up 415 from last week, which would correlate to the increase in the number of tests. The total number of deaths in Lancaster County is at 26, which is up about 2 from last week. Deaths as a percentage of total tests is 0.031%. That is down from last week. And the deaths as a percentage of positive cases is 0.377%. And when you round to 3 significant digits, which is what I do, that's damn near identical to last week. Deaths as a percentage of the total population of Lancaster County is 0.00815. That represents an increase of 0.0062% from last week. I am not seeing anything in chat. Let me look and see if I can see something here on my mobile device that would indicate that someone is entering something in chat. Okay, Drop of Truth. Thank you for Drop of Truth. Appreciate you doing that. Hey, Drop of Truth, daylight savings time in Australia now. Stupid idea. We have daylight savings time here now too. I think it's something that's probably past its utility at this point. It was done originally, when things were largely rural. And so you wanted to make sure that you had as much daylight, that you could possibly get. Because when you get out to a place like, my family ranch land, the only thing that you're going to see out there for light is, the sun. So I think it was for that, but it's pretty much, lost anything of utility at this point. Probably could go away. I want to mention briefly, like I did last week, the October 15th presidential debate coming up. I'm going to do a live watch party for that. Now, I have watched a lot of other YouTubers watch parties. So next time, unlike the last time, I'm going to take a chance and I'm going to put C-SPAN in a window and mix in the audio. My feeling is that if Daisy Cousins, who has a lot more visibility and has to fight with copyright stuff all the time with YouTube, if she can get away with it, I should be able to get away with it too. Drop of Truth says it's now 1,300 hours there. When I lived in Western Australia, we tried it for 3 years in the 80s, and the farmers had it banned. It was affecting the cattle. Ultimately, it doesn't really matter. Out where my family ranch land is, they get up when the sun comes up, and they go to bed when the sun goes down. The cattle don't care what time it is particularly. Okay, talk about a vice presidential debate last night. I don't have any prepared remarks for this because I didn't watch it. What's the point? I mean, really, what's the point? Whenever has the vice presidential debate really mattered? I mean, do you remember even the last vice presidential debates? Because I don't. I don't remember any of the vice presidential debates of my lifetime for all 10 of the presidents that I've been through. I mean, hell, do you remember the Mondale Rockefeller debate? Back when Jimmy Carter was running against Gerald Ford? No, nobody remembers this stuff. It's not as though anybody is going to be convincing anyone at this point. And I'm firmly convinced that at this point, people have made up their minds already. You've got people who are going to vote for Trump, and watching the debates, they're going to say, oh, Pence was great. And that's what's happening. I've seen it on social media. And if you want Biden to win, they're going to say, oh, gosh, Kamala Harris did an amazing job, really beat him. They're doing that on social media. Who cares? Really, who cares? It is a pointless exercise in futility, and I did not watch it. I'm hearing a lot of stuff about a freaking fly that went in Pence's hair. Who cares? If that's your major criticism of the whole damn thing, if that's what you take away from it, then I guess you're just one of the leftists and probably want Harris and Biden to win, and it just doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. There's no point. Watch the presidential debates. Those tend to matter a little. Although in this case, I'm not sure they do anyway. I think people have made up their minds, and things are not going to change. Drop of Truth is saying, I didn't bother with the VP debate. Who cares? I'm right. Yeah, who cares? Who cares? I couldn't care in the slightest. I do not remember any vice presidential debate any time in my 55 years on this planet. No one remembers them. We get it right now, and for the moment it'll be a thing, but the next time the presidential debate rolls around, nobody will care. And to be honest, those debates are rigged. Not in the way you think. They're rigged so that no third-party candidate can possibly get in. That's one thing that Democrats and Republicans will agree on. Make sure there are no third parties. Despite the fact, if you look at your ballot, there are going to be quite a lot of people who are on that you could vote for. But you will never see them at a debate. Never. It's only ever going to be the Democrats and the Republicans. So I didn't watch it. What's the point? What's the point? So, updates on U.S. Civil War II. Well, what can I say? The violence continues across the country. Last night there was some in suburban Milwaukee. And that was one that was interesting because after they got finished trashing and looting everything in sight in some business district, they went through some residential districts and they started throwing rocks through glass. It has escalated. And what do you say? Let's see. Trump Truth says the false dichotomy of this evil ass versus his other evil ass. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Anyway, we're still seeing the usual stuff across the country. It's not limited to just what got caught last night. It picks up everywhere. I listened to my police scanners. They've got a lot of them all over the country, always. And the violence continues. It is the usual rioting, looting, arson, robbery, armed robbery, assault with a deadly weapon, and the murder of innocents. And now Black Lives Matters is ramping things up by giving some of their members AR-15s and similar weapons. It was bad enough, frankly, when we had some of the smaller, generally white protest groups that were carrying around guns, but now both sides have it, and it ramps it all up even more. Now, there was a very interesting thing that happened, a new recent study that suggests that both Democrats and Republicans at this point are on parity with their opinions about whether we're headed towards a shooting war. It was about 30% on either side, about a third. But keep that in perspective for a moment, because at the beginning of the American Revolution, only about 1/3 of the colonists supported the revolution. Just 1/3. The rest of them were sympathizers either with the British or with the colonists. But 1/3, that was the only part that actually wanted a revolution. And now we have 1/3 on both sides who believe that civil war is coming. This frankly tells me that civil war is probably inevitable. Now, I say this over and over and over to both people on both sides. Before I tell you what that is, Dropper2 says, some drongo on Twitter said Adam Cole only shot at the police once. Why did they shoot at him? Why don't these people have any trace of intelligence, do they? There's very little intelligence involved on either side, which is why I'm going to mention this. I have told either side this. You bloodthirsty scumbags on both sides who are agitating or looking forward to a civil war are complete morons. War is terrible. It's blood and gore and guts and veins in your teeth and eating dead, burnt bodies. And actually, I should not minimize it like that by quoting Alice's Restaurant by Arlo Guthrie. War is the most horrific thing a human being can engage in. War is your best friend's brains being splattered all over the wall. War is your son being beaten to death with a baseball bat to the point where he is utterly unrecognizable. War is your daughter, your wife, your girlfriend being gang raped by 500 men. And that is not an exaggeration. Ex-CBS reporter Lara Logan learned the hard way when after she was raped by 500 men during the Arab Spring uprising in Egypt. And it wasn't just male body parts, are there? They used flagpoles, sticks, and anything else that they could shove inside her bloody vagina and anus. The fact that Lara Logan still lived to tell this tale is a miracle. She was hospitalized for weeks, and I assume will need, good psychological therapy for the rest of her life. That's your daughter, your wife, your sister, your girlfriend. That's what lies in store for them during a real war. War is your neighborhood and businesses being set aflame. Sometimes war is being burned alive inside a flaming structure that you can't escape. Or it's being burned alive when the enemy pours gasoline on you and then lights you on fire. Or it's your son, your daughter, or your infant screaming in agony as their flesh is burned down to the bone. And that only touches on the horrors of war. That's just the beginning. And you scumbags on both sides are rooting for it. I've seen you on social media sometimes. I've engaged with you. You sicken me with your eagerness to experience all that. And on the right, good God, they're giddy with anticipation. They think it'll be a short war because the left is anti-gun, so they think the left has no guns. Well, wrong again, you bloodthirsty scumbags. Watch the videos. Look at the images. The left is well armed and entrenched. And on the left, they're just waiting for an excuse. They think that it's all justified, and they're going to tear down the system. Well, guess again, you wrong, bloodthirsty scumbags. The right and libertarians like myself will not let you destroy everything. War is death and horror on every side. And worse, you're both a pack of morons if you think you're going to really win. Nobody wins in a civil war. It is just horror. It never turns out the way that either side wants. You bloodthirsty, murderous, eager pack of bastards on both sides. You sicken and disgust me. You have no idea what you're getting into. Check my chat here real quick. Drew says, war is evil, pure and simple. Yes, it is. He also said, when the guns start firing, you don't know how many children will die, how many lives will be ruined. You and I, men, we are two great minds thinking alike. Because now, as many of my longtime viewers know, a long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away, I was once an actor. But I was never a great actor. If I was, I'd still be an actor. And I'm certainly not at the level of the British actor Peter Capaldi, who played the 13th Doctor on the TV series Doctor Who. However, as Drop of Truth is pointing out, there is a rather brilliant speech about war that was written by Stephen Moffat for Capaldi's Doctor. I can't show this to you because the BBC is very jealously, aggressively guarding their copyrights and will do things to this video after it's done. So unfortunately, you're just going to have to bear along with me trying to make do with Moffat's speech. I'm going to approach this the same way that the late great acting guru, Dr. William Morgan, suggested. When you go into an audition, I guess you can kind of consider an audition. When you go into an audition, you may say to yourself, I may not be the greatest actor in the world, but listen to this material. This is great material. So I'm going to just do it. Apologies to Peter Capaldi. I will never be able to do it the way that you did. Those of you who want war, you just want cruelty to beget more cruelty. You are not superior to the people who are cruel to you. You're just a whole bunch of new cruel people. A whole bunch of new cruel people being cruel to other people who will then be cruel to you. The only way anyone can live in peace is if you're prepared to forgive. Why don't you break the cycle? And what is it that you actually want? War? Well, when the war is over, when you have your homeland free from the left or the right in this case, what do you think it's going to be like? Do you know? I mean, have you given it any thought? Have you given it any consideration? Because you're very close to getting what you want. So what's it going to be like? Paint me a word picture. Are you going to live in houses? Do you want everybody to go to work? When will the holidays be? Oh, what about the music? Do you think people will be allowed to play violins? Who will make the violins? Well, you don't actually know, do you? Because just like every tantruming child in history, you don't actually know what you want. So let me ask you a question about this brave new world of yours. When you've killed all the bad guys, and it's all perfectly just and fair, when you have it exactly the way you want it, what are you going to do with people like you, the troublemakers? How are you going to protect your glorious revolution from the next one? Well, maybe you'll win, but nobody wins forever. The wheel just keeps on turning. So come on, break the cycle. I'm just trying to get you to see. I hope that I'm almost there. But let's imagine for a moment that each side has a box, and on that box are 2 buttons. And if you press one, you have a 50-50 chance of killing the other side or your own. And so we're off. Fingers on the buzzers. Who's feeling lucky? Are you ready to play the game? Who's going to be the quickest? Who's going to be the luckiest? Because that is not a game. It is a scale model of war. Every war ever fought right there in that box. Because it's always the same. When you fire that first shot, no matter how right you feel, you have no idea who's going to die. You have no idea whose children are going to scream and burn. How many hearts will be broken? How many lives are shattered? How much blood will be spilled until everybody does what they were always going to have to do in the first place? Sit down and talk. Just listen to me. Listen. I just want you to think. You know what thinking is? It's just a fancy word for changing your mind. And if you will not change your mind, then you will die stupid. Alternatively, you could just step away from the box. You could walk out the door and stand down your revolution. And if you don't think I understand war, are you kidding me? Of course I understand. I mean, do you call whatever you're going to do a war, this funny little thing, a war? It's not a war. I fought in a war bigger than you can ever know. I did things you could never imagine, and when I close my eyes, I hear more screams than anyone will ever be able to count. And do you know what you do with all that pain? Shall I tell you what you do with it? You hold it tight till it burns your hand. And you say this: no one else will ever have to live like this. No one will ever have to feel this pain. Not on my watch. That is the Capaldi speech. Pardon me. I kind of got into it at the end. It is a problem when you're in, even when you've been an actor for a long time ago. You can get the feels. You can get the feels. Going back to my chat real quick. Yes, drop of truth. The Zygon inversion speech, and it is brilliant. And after the wars ended, there's the destroyed economy, the infrastructure, the injured. And then comes the disease, cholera, typhus, etc. Yes, depending on how many people are dead, all of that is part of war. And that, you sick, diseased, moron, warmongering idiots hoping and praying for death and destruction, that speech is what you want. I know you probably won't pay the slightest attention to me once my reach. But the Civil War, too, is in progress. It is ramping up, and we're all going to have to choose sides, whether we want to or not. The horror of war is coming to your door. So make sure that you make your choice wisely. Jeanette says, nicely done, Bill. Thank you. Somebody out there, I'm going to pull that out as a clip. I'm dead certain. That whole thing about the war, I'm going to pull that out as a clip because, well, I'm surprised. I actually got emotionally invested in that. I was a little surprised. I ran through it a couple of times today and didn't quite have that reaction. So, to break up some of the serious stuff for a while, let us do, and Jeanette, you were the one that complained about the sound of the bridge. Is it better this way? I don't know what happened. Is things? Do I sound better with this? If so, I'll just do the review with this background instead of the bridge one. Better? Okay. We'll just let it go. I'll just do that review here. Drop2 says the inanity of these protesters in that they're grown up on Hollyweird nonsense. They think getting shot can be shaken off or shrugged off. Too many Stallone and Schwarzenegger schlock. Yeah, absolutely. Didn't hear anything after my name. Okay, well, it was good. 5x5 list. Thank you very much. Don't think I've seen your name in here before, but thank you. So we'll just do the review with this background instead of my throwing in the bridge. I'll see if I can fix it later. So, this episode of Lower Decks that premiered this morning, the last one of the season. This is for the Star Trek and science fiction fans. And again, it's me breaking up what's going on with some of the serious stuff with something that isn't quite so serious. So what worked in this episode? Well, the story idea, the idea of a species capable of being really a threat, that's a good notion. The subplot of people learning that the only reason Mariner is on the ship or even in Starfleet is due to nepotism is an interesting idea. Boimler working toward a promotion off the Cerritos. Now, this is actually the only story thread that's good as far as I'm concerned, because that character, while way too eager to please and kind of a brown-noser, occasionally he had moments of non-midi, which is comedy that's so bad that instead of you feeling indifferent or happy, you go from happy to worse. He deserved this promotion that he got. He's the only character around there that did. And for the first time in any iteration of Kurt's Trek, I actually felt satisfaction with an outcome. But, of course, there's always things that don't work. Drop2 says it took 10 episodes to make a half-decent one. Yeah, absolutely. This is the only one that I would think worth paying for out of the entire 10 episodes. But in terms of things that just totally fell flat, well, it was mostly the execution of the story idea. The entire crew learns of Mariner being on a ship and in Starfleet solely due to nepotism, and then they spend the rest of the episode trying to kiss up to Mariner. That doesn't make any sense. You kiss up to the captain if you're going to kiss up to somebody. Bringing back the psychopathic Starfleet insignia that was on the holodeck to write a virus. Okay. It certainly made for an exciting denouement, but you think about it, it doesn't really make sense if you can have a computer program that can create other programs. Just have your computer do it. Don't resort to a psychotic thing on the holodeck. It doesn't make much sense. Holodeck is a program being run by the computer. So the computer obviously has the capability to do this, where their programs can. Oddly enough, there was no real issues with non-midi this time around. I didn't get, so that was okay. A lot of callbacks as usual. Some of them worked. The planet Beta 3, where they started out. Now, that was seen in the Star Trek, the original series episode, Return of the Archons. And they recreated, if you look carefully in the background, they recreated the computer that was Landru in that episode very, very precisely. The episode was, the live action episode in the 60s, was shot on a studio lot. And if you look carefully at the animation, they actually recreated the back lot very precisely. There's a callback with Kirk and Spock. Towards the beginning of the episode, they're holding a captain or somebody's holding a pad, and you see Kirk and Spock standing there. Well, this was actually a still from Star Trek, the animated series. So if you're going to do that, that was kind of cool. This Lower Decks has made many different allusions to the animated series and callbacks for it. Most of the time they don't work because they're too overt. As I mentioned before, it's rapid-fire callbacks that are embedded in unfunny, rapid-fire non-jokes. But this was just a quick picture. If you didn't even know about Star Trek the Animated Series, you wouldn't have even noticed what it was. Over to my chat for a second. Oh, yes, Super Cruise 63 wanted to say RIP to the great Eddie Van Halen, who just lost his battle with cancer. The music world just got a little bit dimmer. Yeah. Total aside, a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away when I was an actor, I was also what was called a stagehands union extra. There's not a lot of venues or stuff going on constantly in Lincoln to employ more than just a few stagehands, on the professional level. So what would happen is I got on a list, and they would call me when they had a big event. One of them happened to be Van Halen that I was doing. What that really meant was that I came in and I worked for about 24 hours straight, which was great because after the first 8 hours, you got time and a half. After I've forgotten how many hours after that, you got double. So I made quite a lot of money doing that, far more than any student could do. You could do that and not have a part-time job for months. They really paid well. But I did happen to work one of their concerts, and after the band left, I was out on the stage kind of cleaning up stuff, and there were a bunch of guitar picks that Eddie Van Halen had used, and somebody out in the crowd yells out, as they're leaving, and somebody yells out, "It's not too far. Hey man, $20 for one of those guitar clips." And I said, "I'm sitting here, I'm in one of those situations like I don't want to do anything wrong because I want to keep making this money." I said, "No, I'm sorry, dude." One of the crew hands, who was one of the traveling crew hands, just said $40, and he got it. I resolved at that point that the next time I did one of those shows, it didn't come up again, unfortunately, but the next time I did a show with somebody who was big with a guitar or something, I was going to buy a bunch of guitar picks from a local music store and just sell them for $40 a pop, So that's my little story about Eddie Van Halen. You're absolutely right. The music world is certainly dimmer for his passing. Absolutely. Drop2 says, "What is wrong with writers today? They really can't write science fiction. A case in point, Raised by Wolves. It was dreadful. Had no cohesive plot or continuity." And also you're mentioning as TAS. That is the animated series, Star Trek the animated series. Yeah, I don't know what they can do in terms of writing. Drop2 says he recently watched the animated series. One or two fails, but in all, quite entertaining. Immortal Spock was awful. Yes, the giant Spock, that was terrible. But then it was written by Walter Koenig, who played Chekhov in the original series. Yeah, that was kind of a nod to him because they got the rest of the original series back to do the voices. But for financial reasons, they couldn't afford him, so they gave him an episode to write. But yeah, as I've always said, the animation is crude by today's standards because, A, they were drawing things, not using CGI to create stuff, and they had to cut corners because it was not it's not like today where they have a crap ton of money to spend on this stuff. They had limited budgets, which meant the animation, did not go at 24 frames per second like most TV shows do, and the best stuff about Star Trek the animated series really was they put a lot of money into the backgrounds. They couldn't do a lot of money with moving characters. That was hard, but they put a lot of money in the backgrounds, and they put a chunk of money into the stories. If you can look past the limited animation, these stories are very good. There are some of them that are just great, that stand up right next to live-action Star Trek stories. Very, very good. I can always recommend The Slaver Weapon. That is an awesome episode that introduced me to Larry Niven and his Known Space series, because that is adapted from one of his short stories that appears in a series that he wrote. It's both short stories and novels. There are lots of other good episodes, a couple of just outright duds. But the hit-miss ratio, all TV shows when they're doing episodic stuff, as opposed to these long 10-episode arcs where they focus on basically one thing, they have a hit-miss ratio. Some are good, some are bad. Star Trek had a hit-miss ratio. Some of them were good, some of them were amazing, few of them were bad. Pretty good hit-miss ratio both on the original series and in, all of them. Everything up through, Star Trek Enterprise, for the most part. Yep, Hal Sutherland. It wasn't studios. It was done by Filmation. But Hal Sutherland, he directed almost everything that Filmation ever did. Filmation did in their heyday, from the 60s through the 80s. They did a ton of stuff. They just did a ton of programs. And Hal Sutherland directed almost all of them. Yes, definitely better than Hanna-Barbera and their repeatable backgrounds. Yeah, Flintstones, Yogi Bear, etc. Yeah, and even then, if you watch those, they were taking the same sorts of shortcuts. It wasn't unusual. Saturday morning television was considered a dumping ground, so they took a lot of shortcuts. So, other things that did not work in this episode. The USS Titan. Now, this is pure fan service, because fans have been wanting to see the Titan in action since Riker was promoted to captain and given command of that ship at the end of the last Next Generation cast movie, the very truly awful Star Trek Nemesis. Now, Deanna Troi, and by the way, they were both voiced by Jonathan Frakes and Marina Sirtis, but Deanna Troi, she was pretty well executed. She looked like herself. She basically acted like her old self, but in a more comedic setting, and that works. Riker was just totally over the top and was not the character that we remember at all in any way. Wasn't the Flintstones on prime time? Yes, at various times it was. Yes, the Flintstones was. It was a great show. But again, they cut corners with their animation. There was always talk that Star Trek, the animated series, should be in prime time because it did not compare to anything else that was on that Saturday morning dumping ground. It was considered just kiddie fare, and there were lots of crap. Star Trek, the animated series, has actual good stories, and at various times in the 1970s, during that run, they said this show should really be on prime time. Other things that sort of didn't work, that did work, sorry. There was one thing that worked. Flintstones was based on the Honeymooners. Yep, absolutely. And you're so old. You and I both know that. The security chief's self-sacrifice. The security chief grabbing that cyborg engineer. I'm sorry, I don't remember these character names because I just don't care about this show that much. And then carrying him. And the way he said it, I believe was intended to be a reference to Samwise carrying Frodo to Mount Doom in Lord of the Rings. And that moment actually brought a smile to my face. It's the first time I've ever smiled during this show. And it was what brought this thing up from a 3 out of 5 to a 4 out of 5. I got a smile out of that. That was nice. Things that don't work. Calling the Kirk era of Star Trek TOS. Now, TOS is a fan abbreviation for the original series, but inserting the original series as TOS in another context, meaning those oldest scientists, was, to be frankly, cringe-inducing. Things that didn't work on Beta 3, well, the inhabitants reverting to worshipping a computer that had blown itself up more than 100 years before made no sense. It actually kind of crapped on the original series by saying that everything that happened in that episode, Return of the Archons, was basically meaningless. The same thing would have happened whether Kirk and company had intervened or not. But Landru, the computer, blew itself up. there was nothing left to worship. There was no way for this very primitive planet to fix it. They didn't have the technology. It blew up. I thought that was dumb. Then there were the Packlids. It seems highly improbable that the Packlids could find the spare parts to build really big, dangerous ships. Now, they first appeared, the only time they ever appeared, was in Star Trek The Next Generation in the episode Samaritan Snare. And in that episode, they had to kidnap Geordi just to have somebody with enough brains on the ship to keep their crappy ship from falling apart completely. So what happened here? Did the stupid Packlids who could, barely keep one tiny crappy ship going without kidnapping people, what did they kidnap? A whole bunch of engineers and scientists to make their stupid fleet run? I don't know. Again, the thing doesn't work was Riker being way over the top. Nothing like the Riker that we'd all come to know and love. It would have been possible, again, for him to be more like Deanna, still himself, but just in a more comedic setting. Then there was that stupid exocomp. Now, this was something we also saw in an episode of Star Trek The Next Generation called The Quality of Life. Now, I'm on board with these exocomps, having some self-awareness, even being in Starfleet over time. I really don't have any problem with that. I just think the execution of how that was done was really pretty actually stupid. I am glad it got stuck in empty space. It deserved it. It could easily have done this whole job by delivering the virus, thus negating the need for the security chief to die in heroic fashion. So good riddance, Exocomp, whose name was stupid for no good reason. So, end of my review, we have to ask ourselves, is it any good? Well, again, I gave it a 4 out of 5, with my scoring being 1 existentially threateningly bad, and 5, it made me laugh once. 4 out of 5, better than the rest of the season, but, not great. I still didn't laugh. As always, that's the biggest problem. This is supposed to be a comedy, and it just wasn't funny. For the first time, however, I did get a smile, so I guess that's something. Drop 2 says, the contraband aside was cleverer than I expected. Yeah, this one had a lot of decent moments, certainly more than we've seen before in this show. So it does stand out as the best episode of the season. That is if you can call 10 episodes a season. I mean, in my mind, Star Trek Discovery has barely 1 season. And the real reason is this because the TV series consists of 24 to 26 episodes. But Kurt's Trek is generally just soap opera structured for a long, long, boring time. Now, I cannot let it pass on this because right after the thing happened, we saw a trailer for Star Trek Discovery Season 3 that's going to start next week. It replaces Star Trek Lower Decks. Burnham is heard saying, everything's different. I am different. I promise you. Will there be a season 2 of Lower Decks? No idea at this point. No idea. I don't know what their viewing figures are. But this part where you actually have Mikey Spock, Burnham, actually saying things are going to be different now. That was a deliberate attempt to tell Star Trek fans that this time around, they're going to maybe have Mikey Spock do something good. It was, please watch, CBS was saying. We listened. We know from the streaming numbers and the terrible broadcast reviews, oh my God, the broadcast ratings have been in the toilet, that we have fracked up, and you hate it. We fixed it. Please give us another chance. Please, please, please. We have bet our entire streaming service on Star Trek. For the love of God, please watch. Well, guess what, guys? I don't believe for a femtosecond that you've got it. Call me when you cancel everything currently in production and fire the talentless hack fraud Alex Kurtzman. And then, frankly, call me to hire me to be the showrunner for everything. I have pitched on this show what I would do to how to fix this entire mess and make it popular. Hell, I'll pitch it again if you want me to. Dropper 2 says, trailer of STD at the end look impressive regarding the CGI, nothing else, yes. He also says, Mikey Spock will be a savior of the future, too. Mary Sue, anyone. Yeah, I just got a kick out of the fact that, basically they'd given her a line that's talking straight to the audience that says, please, come watch, we've changed. And I don't believe it. I don't believe it for a second. So, let me move something down here so that I'm ready for my next cards. I want to talk about the effect, the permanent mental illness that we now see in leftists. Now, I don't have prepared remarks on this. I had too many prepared remarks already. I wasn't going to kill myself. We have a group of people, a large group of people on the left, who are in fact mentally ill. Now, people like to call this Trump derangement syndrome, TDS. Pitch it again, Drop It Who says, another night, not tonight. It has, after all, been 45 minutes, and I still got things to talk about with you, and you can bring up anything you want, call me, whatever. But we have a group of people who are, in fact, outright mentally ill. People like to call it TDS. I don't like that term because it's not an actual scientific term. I prefer, real scientific terms. But not being a psychologist, I don't know what you call it. It's some kind of mass hysteria and delusions. But they are clearly suffering from a mental illness. We'll just call it TDS for short. They have been suffering this now for 4 years. And I got to tell you, if you're watching me and you're on the left, if you're still pushing, the Russia conspiracy, if you're still pushing, things about Trump and the virus I can't mention, if you are still pushing, stupid conspiracy theories, like he didn't actually test positive for the virus, rather it was just a publicity stunt to him to get, more votes, that's stupid. That isn't what happened. And by the way, if you're on the right and you think I heard the right floating this dumb conspiracy theory that it was given to him on purpose, no. But it's interesting to see, some of the conspiracy theories that are out there, I used to think were generally the sole province of the right, some of the far-right crazy people. Now, we have an entire group of people who are not otherwise crazy, who are pushing all this crap. They have been mentally ill. I mean, if you went to a therapist, this is a therapist's office behind me. If you went to a therapist and talked to them, and they're honest with you, they would have to diagnose you with something. Again, I don't know what it is. They wouldn't call it TDS. They'd call it something else. Yes, 38 days before the election. Woo! I don't know which way this is going to go. I used to think it was going to be a straight up for Trump, but the press is, and I'll talk about that in a bit, the press has been exceptionally good at the propaganda, and it may have altered people's minds in terms of changing their minds. That really isn't appropriate. I can talk to you a little bit about an extreme example of this mental illness. Won't name names, but I have a very old friend who earlier this year, he was hospitalized with what he called a nervous breakdown. Now, I've been watching this individual on social media, Facebook particularly, and this individual is one of those people who's got Trump on the brain 24/7, 365. He could not write something that wasn't horrific about Trump or some crazy conspiracy theory. Still do it today. But they had what they called a nervous breakdown. He had what he called a nervous breakdown in January. And he blamed Trump. In a way, he may have been right. It's an obsession. It is an obsession. They detest Trump to their very souls, and they will say and float all kinds of ridiculous things, and they do it constantly. This friend of mine who I've known for 30 years, in one way or another, he was just constantly, and still constantly does stuff like that. his relatives have told him, you need to take a break from this. You need to get this out of your head because it's really messing with you. So I don't know, exactly what went on with this, what they called a nervous breakdown, but clearly he was, had Trump on the brain 24/7, 365. He couldn't do anything right. He was terrible. He was responsible for everything that goes wrong in the universe. Still does stuff like that. And, the one thing I was aware of was one of this person's relatives. This person had wished for more people on the right to get COVID, that virus, sorry, that I'm not supposed to mention, and to die. Actually called for the deaths. Also a person who, when Trump was in the hospital, wished his death. The only reason that person did not get, unfriended and banned from my social media is because I've known them for a very long time. But they are an extreme example of what happens when you have been mentally ill for 3 to 4 years. What bothers me is this. I have been in and out of therapy myself, and my parents were psychologists, so I never have any problem going in for therapy if I need it, or if, telling people about it, because it's not something you need to be afraid of or embarrassed about. It really isn't. It's just another kind of doctor, dealing with your mental issues, if you have any, neuroses. They don't call it that anymore. And because of my, I talk about it from time to time. I have a diagnosed severe anxiety disorder that I treat with medication. But at various times, I've also had cognitive behavioral therapy, which is what they talk about when you go into a therapist's office. The thing about it is, you have to A, recognize that you have a problem, and then B, want to change. You must want to change, or going to therapy will do you no good whatsoever. You have to recognize the problem and want to change. Well, we have a huge population of leftists who are mentally ill, and they live in, these bubbles that don't, like that friend of mine where his relatives said, hey, you need to back the hell off. This is getting to you in ways that aren't healthy. They don't have somebody like that in their life. They are just surrounded by people ideologically who are also mentally ill, and so they don't see a problem. But I'm telling you, on the left right now, I'm telling you outright, if you guys, are so obsessed that all you think about day, night. This friend of mine had dreams about Trump. If you're at that level, if you can't find anything good in the man, and there's lots of things to criticize, but if you can't think of one single thing that he did that was wrong, right, if everything is a conspiracy, if everything that he does is terrible, then you have a mental illness. The problem is that you don't know it. You don't know that you need to change. You don't know that you need to go to therapy. My concern is the longer that you go on with a mental illness, it changes kind of the way you think. I don't know the theoretical behind it now, but it may change literally how your brain is working. And that means that the longer you go mentally ill, even if you want to change, the more difficult it becomes to do so. You've got this ingrained now. And I don't see it going away. Even if Trump loses, I don't see it going away. What do we do in a country where a huge percentage of our population is mentally ill? What do we do? What does that look like? Because I think we're going to find out. It may be just part of the coming civil war. It just may be that those people are going to be killed. I don't know. But it worries me quite a lot. As somebody who has relatives in psychology, I'm about to have a third close relative in psychology, and someone who's been to therapy plenty of times. I know that you have to know you have a problem and you want to fix it. They don't know they have a problem. They don't know they have to fix it. And they're going to keep doing this forever. I don't know what to do about it. I don't know what it looks like. It's contributing to the Civil War, no question about that. Dalton Brazier says, let me see. Okay, I'll drop a tooth first. I watched a colleague of mine go through a, quote, nervous breakdown, unquote, in front of me. I was 22. He was 42. He aged to 10 years in 9 months. It's scary. This particular individual is elderly to start with. It's not good for his health in any way. Dalton says, I had a friend like that. That's all he could think of or talk about. But I finally got to him, and now he's a libertarian. Oh, great. Awesome. I've tried engaging this friend of mine, and there's just no changing his mind. There's no changing his mind at all. Drop of Truth is continuing. He couldn't turn off, and you could. Once you're out the door, work disappears. Alcohol and medicinal Mary Jane helps too, and God friends. Yes. Not necessarily suggest the alcohol, maybe the Mary Jane. It seems to be considerably less addictive ultimately. Always thought that we were doing our children a real disservice from the 1980s by saying, no, it's a gateway drug. It'll take you to heroin and stuff like that. Nah, it's not really a gateway drug. Said a million times, I'm just waiting for them to make it legal in South Dakota, in which case I'm going to go out, I'm going to go grow one crop, bring it into Wall during the Sturgis rally weeks, make a fortune, and then I'm gone. I'm going to live in the mansion that I'm going to build from that one crop. Oh, you mean good friends? Yeah, Freudian slip. Drop of truth, yeah. That's my concern. You guys really are mentally ill. You need to recognize that you have a problem, and you need to seek therapy. Now, I will mention that you can find a qualified therapist if you're in the U.S., and I'm sure there's something like this in other countries like Australia. In the United States, you can find easily a qualified therapist in your area by simply going to apa.locator.com. It will then, you can put in your zip code, maybe if you know what you're having problems with, or like there's people that specialize in children, family, which is usually some couples therapy, stuff like that. And in this case, I don't know what you'd call it, but you can find a qualified therapist in your area. Just go to locator.apa.org. That's the American Psychological Association. And again, that URL is locator.apa.org. So, my next little topic. The world press. It is fueling every single damned thing wrong with the United States. It will not cover Civil War II correctly. However, I will note, even CNN is now starting to say that we may be in for a real civil war. Even CNN. Of course, they frame it completely differently. They're not framing it right. They're all in bed with Black Lives Matter and the Antifa. In fact, their statement was that they thought the Antifa would win easily. No. Go back to the beginning of this. Go back to the Zygon inversion speech, and you will see there is no good winning. And while they're currently armed and entrenched, people on the right have lots and lots of guns. This would not be pretty. But even CNN is saying that. But they're framing it totally wrong. They're saying, oh, it's the good Antifa versus the bad alt-right, all that. They're not covering, they don't cover important issues, important things like, riots and the usual rioting, looting, arson, robbery, armed robbery, assault with a deadly weapon, and the murder of innocents. They don't cover it. And when they do, when they're forced to cover it, rather hysterically, they'll have, something like I've got, where, they'll have behind them a flaming building, and the lower third scrolling past is saying mostly peaceful. I'm sorry, guys, when you have a flaming building, it's no longer mostly peaceful. They're behind all of this. They fuel all of this. They're outright propagandists. They're fueling it all. They're fueling the hatred of President Trump. There's lots of things I disagree with him on. Don't get me wrong. And I am, at this point, going to have to be forced to vote for him because the left is mentally ill, they're out of contact with reality, and their policies will kill billions on this planet. The Green New Deal alone, as again, Squirrel Smashing Lower Third, would kill an enormous number of people because it would reduce agricultural output in the United States dramatically. So I can't vote for them. But, the press is fueling everything, all of their incredible lies and propaganda. I do not like the term fake news. I prefer the term propagandist because that's what they are. They're propagandists for the left. They do not accurately report the facts. Nothing you see in the press is real. Nothing. And as always, I invite my audience, I invite any of you to give me a news story. It has to be on the web and it has to be print so that I can easily go through it. But if you give me any news story, any source whatsoever, in 30 minutes or so, probably more because I have to explain my methods as I'm going along. But when it's just me, in 30 minutes, I can prove one of three things. Either that the event didn't happen, the event being reported didn't happen as reported, or that when you strip away all of the slick interface, opinion, emotionally loaded language, you end up with, and the filler, you end up with something that's maybe a couple of paragraphs worth of facts. And, when you get into things like the stories about Antifa, which Joe Biden thinks is just an idea, idiot. You shouldn't. How can you vote for Biden when he's either so dumb that he thinks Antifa is just an idea and is ignoring the entire Pacific Northwest? How can you vote for that guy? He's a nutburger. Let's see. Drop Truth says, anyone who deems violence and property damage to be an acceptable course of action needs therapy and preferably lithium. Yeah, most of the people who do this stuff, I don't know how exactly the press lives with itself. They are a no good profession. They've never really gotten the facts right. I didn't put a link to it, but I always do. I point to the 1934 version of the film The Front Page, which started as a stage play, by the way, and I was in a mounting of that stage play a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. So I'm familiar with it, but it was written by two then contemporary reporters, and the behavior and stories filed by the reporters in that movie are drawn from their own experience. And if you update that movie for modern technology, you're going to find that nothing's changed. They've never been trustworthy, but now they are so propagandist that Joseph Goebbels, Hitler's minister of propaganda, would be absolutely proud of them. They do what's called the big lie. Goebbels said if you say something, a big lie often enough, people will believe it. Well, that's what's happened with the press and President Trump. They have told lie after lie after lie constantly so that people believe it. I mean, hell, they're still running with this stupid lie that he has never denounced racism and all that stuff. What? The reason they do that is they take a quote out of context when they were talking about those Charlottesville riots. What he said was, because there were multiple groups there, not just the two who got into it with each other, not those just two scumbag groups. There were multiple groups there, and when he was saying, well, I'm sure there were some good people on each side of those groups, he then went on to condemn the ones that had been crazy and gotten into it with each other. But the press only shows that clip. However, for the last several years, anytime anyone asks, he says, yes, of course I denounce that. I denounce any source of hatred whatsoever. But the press is still running the big lie that he never denounced them. That's the sort of thing they do. Hats off. Joseph Goebbels of, Hitler's minister of propaganda would be incredibly proud of you scumbags. And you are scumbags. You are scumbags. You are propagandists of the worst kind. If you're in the press, I'm wondering how the frack you can live with yourself. How do you live with yourself telling constant, incessant lies? And I assume that you know they're lies because when you see stuff burning down and you report it as mostly peaceful, you're just a propagandist. You're a lying piece of crap. You are a no good member of an utterly horrifying profession. You disgust me. You really do. I can't tell you, the number of times in the last 40 years when you guys have fracked up, and now it has gone up to an entirely different level. You're a no good member of a scumbag profession. I don't know how you sleep at night. You want to know something interesting? I dated a woman in high school, in early college, and she was ultimately became a news anchor. And unless you do things like get really popular and end up going up to the national stage, she was at a local stage, not anywhere near me by the time she was much older. But you know what happens with reporters, particularly women, because they have to look good on camera. And when they start to age, it's just like actresses, they're gone. But you know what happens with reporters when they leave? They go into marketing. That's what they're doing right now. They're marketing, they're propagandizing. They're doing exactly what they're going to do when it's all washed up for them in journalism. They're going to go into marketing, making commercials, trying to convince people of something. That's their area of expertise. These are the people that we have doing all of our news. Don't pay any attention to those no-good scumbags in a no-good profession. If you want real information, I say it a million times. First off, listen to first responders, and you can do that very easily now. It's on the web at broadcastify.com, or if you want to do it on your mobile device, which has a lot of good features going for it, there's an app called Scanner Radio. Both of those are always linked to in my description box. And the third thing you need to do is watch citizen journalists, preferably the ones who point their cameras and shut up. Now, I can tell you that Andy No, NGO, on Twitter is a great person to follow, because he will pick up, he's sort of an aggregator now, he will pick up all kinds of different videos that people have on Twitter and kind of show you what's happening, what's really happening. And then on YouTube, if you want to watch things like, there's a channel called No Woke. I used to be a channel called Woke, where they showed this stuff. No Woke is from the side that I would more be on. And if you want to watch them, they're great. They will show you lots and lots of different locations and what's going on there, and you can see for yourself. So those things are what you need to be using at this point in order to get your information. If you work with the traditional press, they're a load of scumbags. They're a no-good scumbag in a scumbag profession. Don't pay the slightest attention to anything any one of those propagandists has to say. They are lying propagandists, and they know it. Back to chat. Sorry, I shouldn't say Yeah, Drop Juice says, meanwhile, there's a war happening between Armenia and Azerbaijan. Yep, shots are being fired, bombs are being dropped, people are dying too. The American press is pointless. When you want to find out something that's going on overseas, forget the American press. They will never report. The American press doesn't report on a damn thing overseas. Just forget it. They don't report it. If you want to watch something that does, you might try Ruptly. They're also a YouTube channel. I may use them for the debates, because they also Ruptly. Technically, I'm a member of Ruptly. You can join. It's got there's a couple of apps. Basically, it's just people who have these apps accept some story that somebody somewhere in the world wants, and they happen to be near it, and then they go and shoot it with absolutely no talking whatsoever. The intent is basically hand this footage off to the liars and the propagandists, and have their talking heads talking over all the footage. But they're good, because if you don't wait for them to do that, you can see all kinds of stuff that's happening overseas, right on the ground, which is where you should. If you want a source that is at least marginally more truthful, the British BBC, they will report on things that are happening overseas, because frankly they're a lot closer to them. And they're a decent source for information, although you should always, take it with a grain of salt. I'm sure if that I walked really hard through their articles, I could find things that they're, not reporting correctly. Myself, I'm very, very lucky, because I have a very old friend who's a globetrotter. In the last 20 or 25 years, he has been everywhere. I mean, everywhere. He's been on I believe he's been on every continent, and he's been in a lot of different countries, and he has seen on the ground. He doesn't go to all those tourist trap things. Guy was, until he got too old to do it, riding his bike through all of this. He and his wife would ride their bikes through all of these countries and stay at hostels and friends' places. And so he got to see parts of countries that nobody ever sees, and we certainly never see it on, if I want to know something, about some conditions overseas, I ask him. And I say, you have been there. I trust you because you have been there. American press, U.S. press does not do anything in terms of actually doing news about foreign countries. The American press, how the fact do you live with yourself? How do you sleep at night? How do you sleep at night knowing that you are a propagandist that Joseph Goebbels would be proud of? How do you sleep at night? You scumbags. Drop of Truth says, Wag the Dog with Robert De Niro and Dustin Hoffman. Yes, that's a great thing to watch, by the way. Marshall says, we now have a media/propaganda complex to go along with the military-industrial complex, and this will not end well for us. The best thing you can do is ignore completely the traditional press. Go with other sources. My best source, always, is the first responder frequencies, because you will hear things there that the traditional press will never report. I said, and it is not an exaggeration, what the traditional press does not report, and what you hear on those things, what the traditional press does not report, but just about fill the Grand Canyon. There are so many things that you will never hear about. And by the way, Marshall, if you just came in, suggest you watch the rest of this video on demand, because not only did I do some channeling, I did the Zygon inversion speech, which you probably know what is, because I can't put Capaldi up because I'd get killed with copyright. That actually turned out to be an audition piece for me, and I didn't realize it was going to be. Drop of Truth says, fake journalists live with themselves by spending their ill-gotten gains on materialistic crap the corporations win again. Yes, that's true, but I mean, I'm trying to think of places that I've worked. I worked for, well, I'll tell you in all honesty, people who have been around very long on this show know that towards the tail end of my IT career, I taught IT at a technical school that I usually refer to as the place that shall not be named. But occasionally I will name it. I'll name it now. It was the late, unlamented ITT Technical Institute. By the time they let me go, they fired all of the full-time instructors, and they wanted me to come back as an adjunct, and students liked me a lot. Went to the dean and were like, we want him back, and they were like, we can't. Corporate made the decision. I didn't go back to teach there. By the time that ended, I knew how bad they were and how terrible the business practices were, and how they were hurting the students that I was trying to teach by putting them into debt for enormous sums of money. Those people should have all of their debt canceled. ITT Technical Institute was horrible. I couldn't teach there anymore. I couldn't do it. I would love to do some teaching. I think I'm at a point where maybe if I was an adjunct for a real good technical school or community college, I could probably do some teaching and not kill myself. But by the time I left there, my conscience was, I cannot do this. I cannot work for a company that is doing this to their students, just outright defrauding them. I cannot work for that company. And I would, but hey, journalists, they don't care. They don't care. They're scumbags. They don't give a rat's ass. They'll work for anything. They'll say anything. They'll be the propagandists for anything and sleep well at night. For me, I had other things going on that made it difficult for me to sleep at night. But for me, as I said, by the time I left that place, by the time they got rid of me, I was probably this close from quitting anyway. But they let us go, and I'm like, good riddance, And by the way, all you students who were there, if I taught you, your degree is now meaningless. They shut that place down for a good reason. Your degree is now meaningless. But if I taught you, and if you graduated, You can have any of your employers call me, and I will tell them that your degree was real. I taught for real. Regardless of what they were doing to the students, I taught real. But by the end, by God, I couldn't. I just couldn't. I'm sorry for my students who wanted me back, but I could not. That place was horrifying. But journalists all over the world, especially in the United States, don't care. They are nothing but the worst sort of propagandists, and they are causing more strife and pushing us more towards civil war if they just reported the facts. But they're not. They're pushing us more towards the civil war. They are pushing us. They're causing these people that I talked about who have severe long-term mental illness regarding Trump. They are pushing that. They are causing some of these things to happen. They are scumbags. I don't know how they sleep at night. They have no conscience and absolutely no ethics. And like I say, when it's all over for them in journalism, what do? They become marketers. That's what they really are trained to do, not report the facts. Let's see. Tropic Truth says fake journalists live with themselves by spending their... Yeah, okay. Megyn Kelly has a new and honest news feed. Screw her. Megyn Kelly. I got a story about Megyn Kelly. It's not an unusual story, but I happen to be one of the elections way back when, and I don't remember when. I was living in the Sioux City metro area, and she and some other people, she was working at CNN, I think, at that time, and she and a bunch of other people showed up. I've forgotten what they were covering. They were doing something local was going. I think it was President Bush was coming to town for some kind of speech or something, and they decided they were going to cover it. Megyn Kelly was the one that was covering the thing, and she sort of declined to wear underwear that day. You can find clips of that because, of course, you can't, sit constantly with your legs crossed. You have to move. And she was wearing a short skirt and had a wardrobe malfunction several times on TV. And those of us in Sioux City were just laughing our asses off. Here comes this big professional journalist, and she's showing the goods. Drop 2 says, take it with a pinch of salt. What is it with people in the USA misquoting this metaphor? It's a cooking metaphor. Yeah, but it's an idiomatic expression here. Just means, don't assume everything is entirely correct. I'm not take a grain of salt. Take it with a big, giant, 2-pound bag of salt. The kind that you use to spread on the sidewalks in your driveway in the wintertime. That's how much salt you should be using. Marshall says the problem is that 99% of people aren't willing to do the first sources research. Laziness will doom us. Yes. What's going on with Trump, what's really going on with Trump, is nothing but propaganda. If he loses, it will be due to propaganda. That is really it, because there's no good reason that you should be voting for Biden at this point. Just no good reason. Dalton Brazier says, have you seen the declassified documents about the Russian collusion? I'm going to talk about that next when I'm done lambasting the press and everyone in it, these scumbags. Drop Truth is responding to Marshall. Too late to go listen to ELO's Is This the Way Life Is Meant to Be Again? Yeah. Oscar Wilde said the U.S. and England are two countries separated by a common language. Yeah, and that's certainly true. We have idiomatic expressions. For the longest time, watching Doctor Who, sometimes the doctor or other people will refer to himself, the doctor, as clever. Well, for several years, I was a bit confused by that description, and I think a lot of Americans are. Because, as I've said many, many times, words have emotional connotations beyond just the literal connotation. In the United States, clever means that you've done something in a way that's smart, but maybe just a little bit shady. It's a little bit underhanded. Smart, got what you needed, nothing wrong with what you did, but a little bit underhanded. Well, I finally figured out in the UK, clever just means you're really smart. It's, as you say, the USA and England are two countries separated by a common language. You're absolutely right. Drop of Truth says clever is intelligent and practical in English parlance. Clever is not cunning. Yeah, in the U.S. it is something that's smart and cunning. So it's a different emotional connotation. Excuse me. So I think I've had enough of that. I can only go on so long screaming about how bad the press is before I start jumping up and down and steam comes out of my ears and my brain will explode because they're all scumbags. The only person that I know of that is attempting even to cover things truthfully is two people. One is Ben Swan. He has a YouTube channel, and I strongly suggest that you subscribe to. He does a great job. He's the only real journalist that I can see left in America. The other one is James O'Keefe, Project Veritas. People want to say that he's underhanded and is faking things, but I'm sorry, when you have actual footage from someone's Instagram account who is boasting about all the ballots that he has, well, when you just pull it down from Instagram and show it and say, here's the context, here's what's going on, well, it's real. Sorry, it's real. These are the only two people I know of that are practicing anything like actual journalism. The rest of you scumbags, if you're watching me, you are a no good human being belonging to a detestable profession at this point. Bill Hicks said something, and I don't mean this literally, but he was talking about marketing. And he said, marketers, just want to talk to you here in my audience, kill yourselves. Suck a tailpipe, borrow a gun, hang yourself. I don't care. Kill yourself. You are Satan's helper on earth. You're making things miserable. Again, I don't mean you should actually kill yourself, but go watch that because Bill Hicks has it right. The end of the particular bit about that, he says, yeah, they go home and they sleep like a baby. And they're just going, what'd you do today, honey? Oh, well, we made arsenic a childhood food. Well, go to sleep now. Yeah, if your kid's too loud, how do you guys sleep with yourselves at night? You're scum. You're scum. Marshall says, as Jonathan Swift said, when a great genius appears in the world, you may not know him by this sign that the dunces are all in confederacy against him. Yeah. Also add, yes, Tim Pool is also a good aggregator. John Solomon and Sarah Carter. I don't know those two. I'll take your word for that. Marshall and I are generally on the same page regarding all this. Yes, Tim Pool. Tim Pool acts more as what I kind of think of as an aggregator. He takes news and he tries to vet the sources. Tim, if you're ever watching this, for God's sake, watch me do some debunking of the press. He tries to go with what an outside source rates some press outlet as a legitimate outlet or not. Tim, there are no legitimate outlets. There just aren't. Get with me sometime. Throw me anything that you think is legitimate. Give me half an hour, and I'll show you how it's not legitimate. Don't trust that stuff. But he does do a fairly good job of aggregating. He does do that. He tries. He actually tries. Drop of Truth says, Schopenhauer, quote, all truth passes through three stages. First, it is ridiculed. Second, it's violently opposed. And third, it's accepted as being self-evident. Well, I really hope, I really wish, and I know people don't, but I really wish that, people would just realize the press is just nothing but propagandists. I'm not going to go on about it anymore because they piss me off. I've had some piss off moments already today. And as I said, Marshall, you being you, go back and watch the Zygon inversion speech that I did. All right, a little bit here also about the looming Obama-Biden-Clinton scandal. There was a whole bunch of documents. Just going with Marshall here for a second. He's honest, retracts quickly if he's proven wrong. Yes, that's the thing about him. He is honest. Regardless of what he may or may not pick up correctly, he is a very honest guy. He is trying. He is a guy I can understand who would sleep well at night. Unlike every last one of these scumbags, he can sleep well at night at least. He's honest. He's trying. And most journalists are just outright propagandists. Joseph Goebbels is doing a thumbs up from hell. And if I was a religious man, which I'm not, sometimes I wish I were, because I could say, all of you, anyone in journalism, with a small exception of people, if there's a God, there is a special hell for you. Like Firefly. It's the special hell that's reserved for child molesters and people who speak in the theater. If there's a God, that's where you're going. That's where you're headed, you scumbags. In Portuguese, the word news does not exist. They use the word propaganda. Hey, they're honest. My friend that I've known for since high school, who is a globetrotter. His wife is Russian, and she got out at the tail end of the Soviet Union and emigrated to the United States. And she said the difference between how people approach the press in the U.S. versus Soviet Union and now Russia is that in the Soviet Union and now Russia, everybody assumes that the press is lying to them. In the United States, they assume they're not. Guys, always assume that these lying propagandists are lying to you. Anyhow, this new scandal has come up where a bunch of documents have been declassified. I have not yet had time to read them all. I can't really, I don't want to give a real strict opinion on it because I want to read them. I don't want to rely on what the press says about it. I want to actually read it myself. And I certainly don't want to rely on what people in social media are saying, because it's always the same. Oh, the left says it's fake, the right says it's real. What I can tell you is this. I did IT work for the government on occasion. And I can tell you that if I had done what Hillary Clinton had done with her private email server, I would currently be sitting in some federal prison for a very long time. That was a direct violation of federal law. She was running her own private server for the obvious reason that if she got into trouble, she could have it all deleted. And she did. That's totally illegal. She was receiving official information via a totally insecure source. Oh my God, she was using Microsoft Exchange as the email system. I hate Microsoft Exchange. I've had to teach it. It's a giant bitch to deal with. I fortunately have never had to administer it, and I would never want to. But Microsoft Exchange is easy for malicious actors to get into because it is a big target. Lots of people have it, so it's a big target. So they figure out how to do that, and that's one of the reasons it's illegal to do it. And the other reason is you're not supposed to receive government information, classified or not, onto a private server. That all belongs to the government, should be on their servers. Had I done what she had done, I would be in jail. That part of it, I can absolutely say, yes, send that lying scumbag to jail for that like anybody else. If you don't, it proves that there is two tiers of justice in the United States. Justice for the rich and powerful, and justice for people like me. I would go to jail. She gets off scot-free. But the rest of it, I have heard about. I have not read it personally. The rest of it I have heard about because it looks as if Clinton and Biden and Obama were colluding to create this fake Russia thing and to have spying done on Trump's presidential campaign for no good reason. I haven't read all the documents, so I can't give you a real opinion about that. And I never want to give an opinion about something I haven't actually read. I can say Clinton should be in jail. I know she should be in jail because I'd be in jail. But the other stuff I have to look at, but if it adds up to what I'm hearing, then yes, Biden, Obama, and Clinton should be indicted. They need to be indicted. If what we're hearing is right, they need to be indicted. Yet another reason that there's no good reason to vote for Biden. He's racist. He obviously so. He's been a racist his whole life, apparently. You can find all kinds of stuff. He likes to do inappropriate touching. He does what the woman that I follow who does body language. She did an analysis of his body language one time when he was swearing in people to the Senate when he was just a senator. Maybe he was, I guess he was vice president, but he was swearing people in, and they have two things. They basically have, they swear you in at a private thing. And then for the press and for the pictures and having your family there and all that, they re-swear you in at a public thing where you take lots of pictures and the photo cameras are running everything. It's a big photo op. But he does what Bombard's body language calls power touching. And and she did a really good, long analysis of what he does. And YouTube killed it. They took the video away. I have a copy of it. I don't dare put it up. Maybe I'll put it up on my BitChute channel. But it's really instructive, and it was so painful to watch. There was this 12, 13-year-old girl, and what happened was her parents, because her dad's just getting sworn in, basically abandoned her, did not protect her like parents should. She started looking for other people in her family to protect her, kind of found an uncle. She's like, get me the hell away from Biden, because Biden was doing weird stuff. And the worst part of it was, there's this 12 or 13-year-old girl, and let's take a picture with her, puts his arm around her, and his arm, starts out here and moves up to right about here, where this 12 or 13-year-old, I don't know how old, girl who is just developing breasts, he's got his hand right under it. As I say, it's power touching. What Bombard's body language showed was that he would stop that if you would stand up to him. If you walked up to him, and he'd do it with any woman whatsoever, grandparents, little kids, wives of these senators being sworn in. If you were, protective and upfront with it, right? The senators that came in and said, had their wife slightly off to the side of them, not in front, anything like that, off to the side of them. Same with the kids. And he said, nice to meet you, Mr. Vice President. And this is my wife. This is my kid. And owned them. It did not really owned them, but said, I am protecting them. I will protect them. As long as the people were saying, this is my wife, this is my kid, and they stay with me, then he wouldn't do it. But most of the time, those senators are busy thinking about how they can kowtow to the vice president and kiss his ass. So they just abandon their kids and their wives and their grandparents and everybody. And Biden does everything except feel them up. And especially that girl. Oh, it was just horrible to watch, because she was trying to get out of it in every possible way. Even I, who don't read body language that well, I could tell this poor kid. She felt like, oh my God, my parents have abandoned me to this pervert. And they had. And she sought out everybody she could. She got behind a little brother, positioned herself so that this kid, who's maybe 5 or 6, was the one who was standing in front of her in order to protect her from that scumbag. And now, if he is involved in this scheme, well, the guy needs to be indicted. And so does Hillary Clinton. She should be in jail right now. And President Obama. If that doesn't happen, that means there's 2 tiers of justice. One for the rich and powerful, and one for me and you. Got to go back. Drop Juice is saying in Brazil, they have this question regarding elections and politicians. Qual ladrão voce quer? Which thief do you want? Yeah. It's like most of the time when I vote Libertarian, I have a marketing meme. I make all these marketing memes. One of it's a Libertarian saying, "Hey, don't blame me. I voted Libertarian." Not that I think it would matter. I think power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And even if a Libertarian got in, I don't think that they would be very long before they would become corrupt. I think it's just the nature of it. As long as you're operating outside the bounds of the Constitution, which they always do, then power is going to corrupt. Marshall says, after reading a lot of it, there's more circumstantial evidence of some really serious crimes than any evidence of any type has been found in 3 years of Trump investigation. Well, I'm sure of that. I knew the whole Trump-Russia thing was nonsense because I remember where the story originated. It originated with this thing that had been shopped around that none of the traditional press could in any way substantiate, and so they all passed on it. I mean, even those propagandists said, "Oh no, there's no way we can't find any truth to this." No, BuzzFeed picked it up, and the moment BuzzFeed picked it up, BuzzFeed for God's sake, the moment BuzzFeed picked it up, they all piled on. And that was the one where at the beginning they were saying, Trump was over in Russia urinating on hookers and stuff like that, and then just crazy crap. That part of it kind of disappeared, and just the rest of it came out, and it was all nonsense. And I knew it was nonsense because I remember where it appeared. It appeared in something that nobody would touch until the Weekly World News version of news on the internet, BuzzFeed, ran it. And you're going to take something from the Weekly World News, are you? Is Bat Boy real? You're going to report on that, New York Times? Back in my chat, Drop Truth says they were writing drafts, quote, and giving access to many other people, hardly encryption. These people are arrogant fools. Yeah, well, most are. Oh, excuse me. That was what I was trying to mute, and I just belched. You probably heard it. Sorry. I'm drinking Diet Dr. Pepper tonight, and that causes me to have anyway. Drop True says the John Travolta film Primary Colors is very entertaining and thought-provoking. I can recommend it. I haven't seen that one. I'll take a look. I'm always up for a good movie. Drop Truth is saying, if any, quote, man touched my wife or daughter or chose to follow them into the restroom, their next port of call would be in the ER. Yeah. Bombard's body language, she did a bunch of, walk through a bunch of different people. And Biden won't do it as long as the man will essentially say, these women are under my protection. Stand up straight to him. Don't be hunched over and, stand up and say, Mr. Vice President, I'm such and such. This is my wife. This is my daughter. And you are the protector for them. As long as you do that, then he won't touch him. But if you are just ass-kissing, he will do stuff like put his arm around a 13-year-old girl right below her tiny breasts. Oh. That was so hard to watch. It was so hard to watch. Drop 2 says, I remember Pence grabbed a girl from Biden and guided her away in one film clip. Yeah. As I say, Biden apparently will stop doing it as long as the person who he's swearing in will say, here I am, Mr. Vice President. These are my relatives. I am taking responsibility for protecting them. You will not touch them. You don't have to say that. But as long as you introduce yourself in a forceful way and introduce yourself in a way that says, these people are under my protection, then he won't do it. Drop Truth says, politics is like the mafia. The whole world system is corrupt. By being a part of it, you are also complicit. I just look at it and I go, well, the problem is We have not had a constitutional republic in a long, long, long time. To be honest, it really only lasted 18 months until the Whiskey Rebellion, which was put down. So that kind of shot it full of holes. And then there was the Louisiana Purchase that was done by my favorite politician of all time, Thomas Jefferson. And even he said that the Louisiana Purchase strained the Constitution to the breaking point. So I think he did some serious damage to it. I understand why he did it. I might have done the same thing myself. But he did try at least to get a constitutional amendment passed that would allow... There's no language in the Constitution that talks about adding territory to the U.S., so he wanted an amendment that would say, here's how you do that. So without having it, he thought that was a big constitutional problem. And then there was Lincoln. Civil War side in terms of, getting rid of slavery, yay. But he put the nails in the Constitution. He killed it. And every president since then really has been pissing on its grave. I think FDR probably poured the last of the dirt on top of it. But the Constitution is ultimately basically dead at this point. But if we had a constitutional republic, then these people wouldn't have any reason to get very corrupt because they'd have very, very little power. The power would lie largely with 50 different states, and that becomes much more difficult to convince and do things with. But that's my take on the Clinton-Biden-Obama scandal. I have not read it, so I cannot give you a good, firm opinion about it. I am only hearing, rumors and stuff. I trust generally what Marshall's saying because whenever Marshall's around, he's the smartest guy in the world in the room, and he's read some of this. So if he's saying it's pretty bad and worse than the Russia stuff, I would take Marshall's word that it's pretty bad and worse than the Russia stuff. Drop 2 says an amendment is merely the political process of chipping away at the statutes. Eventually, it will all fall. Like I say, we have not had a constitutional republic in over 100 years. Marshall says a newly elected politician could be a hero by saying very loudly, "Get your fracking hands off my daughter." Screw you and anyone associated with you. And I'm switching parties. Yeah, but they don't do that. They kiss ass. Especially new senators. Drop 2 says, how is it that in the USA you can add provisions to the bills being considered? They do that crap all the time. Basically it's just saying, okay, when we make this bill, if I'm a Republican, I will trade you something that you want for something that I want, and it may have absolutely nothing to do with the matter at hand. If it were me, I've said this at other places before, it were me, I'd like to see a constitutional amendment that says any bill that's introduced to the House or the Senate must be 1 page long and handwritten with a quill pen, just like they would have done it in 1776. 1 page long, handwritten with a quill pen by the senator or a congressman. Because most of the time, bills are not written by senators and congressmen. Hell, half the time they haven't read the bill that they're voted on. A lot of them never read the bills that they're voting on. They talk to their staffs, and the staff says, yeah, you should vote one way or the other on this one. But they oftentimes haven't read them. And what turns into is a bill this high, filled with pork, filled with things that have nothing whatsoever to do with the matter at hand. 1 page long, covering one thing, written by the senator or congressman by hand with a quill pen. That ought to slow them down. Drop of Truth says, how is it? Oh, you already caught that here. Marshall says they're called earmarks. Yes, exactly. And some believe they're unconstitutional. Don't think they are in the process. They are as processed to the legislation for most mechanics. Yeah. Nancy Pelosi said about that Obamacare, we have to pass the bill before we can see what's in it. And many, many Democratic senators never even read the thing. Hundreds of pages long. How could you? There isn't time enough in the year for all of those people, for all of those congressmen and senators to read the bills rather, that their own somebody's staff came up with. Well, they got a staff full of legal people. They actually write the bills, and then some senator or congressman will introduce the bill, and some senators and congressmen will sign off as being in favor of it, and it just goes nuts. But again, it's really a question of, when you get down to why are these things thrown in and stuff like that. It's somebody wants something, and the other side says, okay, I'll give you that if you will allow me to have this. And so they put it into this bill that has nothing to do with either of those two things. Marshall says we have to elect Biden before we know his position on packing the Supreme Court, too. Yeah, well. Are bills written on recycled toilet paper? What's on them is the same. I don't know. All I know is they have reams and reams of paper. One of the bad things about my profession, IT, was that we created a situation in which governments can write extensive, lengthy bills. It was one thing when you had to do it, on a typewriter, right? It's another thing entirely when you have a word processor. On a typewriter, if you want to amend something, if you're going around and sharing this bill around, and somebody goes, I want to take out this part, and want to put this part in, some poor secretary has to sit back there and rewrite the whole damn thing by typing it. Word processor, flick of a switch, it just cut and paste, it's gone. Computing unfortunately enabled government to go so far beyond the bounds of the Constitution that today, of course, nobody even knows what the Constitution is, unless you're somebody like me, or maybe Marshall, or other people who are watching the show. Don't even know what the Constitution says or is. Marshall says, if nothing else, that alone should make people not vote for him. I mean, I get it. The people who are going to vote for him are mentally ill. There's a good judge of it, right? Biden is, over the years, he's been a lot more centrist than he is now, but the Democratic Party has moved so far to the left that he's moved really far left too. And what he wants to do would kill a lot of people. Again, scrolling past in my lower third, if they actually implemented the Green New Deal, agricultural productivity in this country would drop like a rock, at least 25%, maybe 50%. And it would kill upwards of 1 billion people on this planet. The Green New Deal would kill upwards of 1 billion people on this planet, including Americans. It would starve them to death. There's no reason to vote for this man. None whatsoever. A racist who likes to feel up 13-year-old girls. Just that alone. I mean, okay, so Trump, he's not a racist. You cannot prove that. Everything about him says he's not a racist. He's not a Nazi. He's not a white supremacist or any of that. He is none of it. Because as a businessman who ran many companies over the years, you can't be anything other than an equal opportunity employer. I don't think he cares. I don't think he cares in the slightest. Biden, on the other hand, filled with racist comments, right up until, particularly when the one that's real famous is when he talked about how, I've forgotten the exact quote, but he talked about how Obama was a good black person because he could clean up well and look good. The times that he said, poor communities can be as good as white ones. The guy's a racist down to his core, and he likes to feel up every woman he can find that is unprotected by someone, and little girls. I will never forget it. I will never forget that. It was so painful watching her. I mean, every part of her body language screamed, get me out of here. Somebody get in between me and this scumbag who's feeling me up. all of her body language is like, please, 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 please. She would be trying to get away from him. He'd pull her back in. She would be trying to, stick her little brother in front of him just so that she had something between, and he'd pull her around. She finally found an uncle that was going to allow, to be the guy in front of her. But even then, when they got back to taking the picture of the group, where was she? Being felt up by Biden. The man is a scumbag. If you vote for him, that is indicative of what I was talking about earlier about mental illness. I cannot think of a valid reason to vote for this man. His policies, if implemented, would kill billions of people, including many of you. And he is a racist, and he likes to feel up little girls. Okay, so Trump may have said things about grabbing a woman's pussy. Let me tell you something. Trump is a giant celebrity. Nobody, no young woman, like in her 20s, right? No young woman is going to be interested in me. If they are, it's because they have serious daddy issues and I don't want to touch them. However, if I won the lottery and I got $100 million, there would be a bevy of gold-digging whores lining up to, be with me. And each and every one of them would be thrilled if it turned out I grabbed them by the genitalia, and they'd probably be totally down with it because they're going, ching, ching. And I'm sure that's what happens with Trump. It happens to all celebrities. It's why, ultimately in Hollywood, it is a place where rape and child molestation rule the day. I mean, Harvey Weinstein was sleeping with these people because they could see the dollar signs. They're going, this guy can further my career. And I didn't go and say anything bad about it until, the Me Too movement started. But he's been doing that for decades. And I'm sure it's the same. Trump, as a celebrity, women are going to throw themselves at him like mad. It doesn't matter how old he is. He's a celebrity with a frack ton of cash, more money than God. Imagine this for a minute. Imagine this. This is how rich he is. And it's, I've thought about it like, what would I do if I won the lottery? I'd try hard to keep most of my money because a lot of people who win the lottery blow it all. But Trump, imagine this. Walking down the street, anything that you see, you can buy. Cars, whole buildings, anything that you want, you can buy because you have more money than God. And that's why women are lining up, get a piece of that cash. And I don't think, when he's talking about that, it's a straightforward thing, but I'm sure that women lined up for their chance at their little piece of that money. And if they were like, sure, grab away, fill me up, do whatever you want. I'm sure that happens. And I can't, it's piggish behavior. He should have, been more faithful to his wife. That's for sure. But it doesn't surprise me. He's a billionaire. And by the way, those of you on the left, if you believe the conspiracy theory that he's not a billionaire, that he somehow lost all this money and stuff, okay, he had multiple businesses. Some went good, some went bad. On the whole, he made a crap ton of money out of the ones that went good. You cannot deny this. If you're one of those people who thinks that this man has no money in real life or is actually a failure as a businessman, you have mental illness. Go to therapy in a room like this. You need it. You have lost it. You've lost it. Let me check and see how far back I need to go. I dropped to the saying, and Mark Twain said, politicians should be changed as often as diapers, and for the same reason. Yeah. I've forgotten who said it, but there's a great quote. No man's wallet is safe while Congress is in session. Marshall says, hell, Pelosi thinks she can initiate a 25th Amendment incapacity action. She knows nothing about the Constitution, absolutely nothing. I don't think most of them knew either. Trump, when he's working with COVID, he did the right thing. And that's one of the things that they're talking about Biden. He would do the wrong thing. Trump said, okay, we're going to leave whatever measures need to be taken up to the state itself, the governors, whoever. The state is going to decide that. That was the correct thing to do, because what's appropriate in New York City, where you have, as I've said a million times on the show, many, many, many vectors of infection, is radically different than where I live in Nebraska, and in particular, the Lancaster County and Lincoln. We don't have the infection vectors. We don't have as many infections, and we never will, because we don't have that many infection vectors. It is correct, it is constitutional under the 10th Amendment to tell, which says anything that's not enumerated in the Constitution is something that's left to the states of the people. So he said, let the states handle it. That was an appropriate thing to do. Biden, on the other hand, he'd come in and do an executive order, and then all of a sudden, all of our businesses in Lincoln, Nebraska that are starting to come back slowly would be shut down again. There's enough people, 50 million plus people that went out of work, and a lot of Nebraskans were thrown into abject poverty because of this, and dependency on government for some kind of check. And that's also a very bad thing. The moment the government controls your money, they actually control you, because they can say, okay, we won't give you the money unless you do this thing. What if this thing is not good for you? What if this thing is totally unconstitutional? What if this thing, you do not want to be relying on government for your money. It's just a very bad idea. I feel a little guilty taking Social Security disability as I do. My feeling on it always is this is money that I, from the age of 16, have been putting in. Sometimes it's been very large because in IT you can make a decent salary. So it should be coming back to me. By the same token, I also know that Social Security is broke. At this point, it is a Ponzi scheme. And at some point, not fairly certainly down the road, it will be totally you will not be able to fund it anymore. It is a Ponzi scheme at this point. Drop 2 says, starve them to death. It worked in Stalinist USSR. Well, that's what will happen if they implement the Green New Deal. Marshall says the grabbing comment was an explanatory one. When you're a celebrity, you can do anything, grab them by the pee, anything. Yeah, and that's true. If I won the lottery, the women who have zero interest in me would be lining up for a piece of that money, even if it meant having to fake loving sex with me, or if it had to fake actually loving me, they would do it. There is an army. Bill Burr mentions this. Go watch it. There is an army of gold-digging whores who would be happy to do any damn thing I wanted as long as they got a little piece of that pie. Marry me? Supermodel, marry me? Absolutely, because that means she gets a big piece of that pie. It's as you say, it was an explanatory thing. You can do anything. You really can. The gold-digging whores will come right out of the woodwork. I give you an example. Actually happened to me. I was working as a consultant, and one of the places that I went for consulting work, one of the companies that I went to consult at, had a secretary there, a receptionist, who was at first very kind of not ignoring me, but just, didn't care. Then discovered that I was in IT, which often commands a decent salary. And then she was all smiles and happy to see me every time I showed up. Clearly, she thought, well, this is a well-paid guy. He's not a doctor. He's not a lawyer. Right? But he's going to make a decent amount of money. Sure hell more than I'm making sitting here at this desk. Hi, Bill. How you doing? Is everything all right? Can I get you anything? Are you doing well? Hey, what about this? What about that? Constantly making conversation with me. And I'm like, oh, she's looking for a piece of my cash. Gold-digging whore. Drop Truth says Trump is a philanderer. Yeah, that's true. He's also immensely wealthy. Women and some men of loose morals will see this as an avenue to wealth. They get what they deserve. Yeah. Dalton, Jesus was actually very poor. Yep. But at least he wanted people to care for the sick, poor, and injured. And he never said anything about passing laws that government forces you to do it. You're supposed to do it yourself. Drop Truth is replying to Dalton, the meek shall inherit the earth in the millennium. Yes, it's in the Bible. Marshall says, before the election, Trump held a fiduciary or board-level position in over 500 companies. Yes. Four of those 500 companies went bankrupt. Almost a 99% success rate. That brings millions to the stockholders. Yeah, Trump was not an unsuccessful businessman. He didn't have just one business that went under. Like you said, he has a board or position stuff in 500. You got 4 of those that went under. You're still a giant millionaire success, Drop 2 says the SGT report has some good videos recently. I don't know. I have to take a look at that. Freedom Fighter 57. Hey, how you doing? I didn't think I've seen your name here yet for my show. Thank you very much for being here. Masks don't work. If somebody farts, you can smell it. Some mutt makes them think it would stop any tiny pieces of a virus. They're communist-controlled muzzles. I agree. Here in my city, I always give our statistics, our virus statistics, at the beginning of the show when I'm kind of waiting for more people to come in. It is such a tiny percentage of both positive tests and then deaths from those positive tests. In a population of about 320,000 in Lancaster County, we have 26 deaths. And yet, the governor has put in yet another mask order so that and shut down restaurants and stuff like that. I'm like, why? And I'll tell you something. Let me show you something that I wrote to my, because I wrote to my, I wrote an email to the mayor of Lincoln, which is in Lancaster County and has those stats. I wrote an email to her, and I said, this is pointless. Look at these stats. Why are we having all this lockdown? Why have we thrown people into abject poverty? Let me read you what I actually said, because I got a reply back. One of her flunkies, a John D. Carlson, wrote me back. And so I said to him, let me move this up to where it looks more like I'm looking at you. This is my response. Mr. Carlson, thank you for your prompt reply. Unfortunately, I've been exceptionally busy, haven't had time to respond until now. And he'd given some statistics about how it slowed the spread and all that. And I said, your statistics are interesting. However, it's clear that they aren't scientifically pertinent. To find statistics, one must do a small amount of research and simple math. These are the pertinent statistics for Lincoln, Lancaster County. I checked them today at the Nebraska Department of Health and Human Services website, and I have a link in it, in the email. This was sent to him yesterday, by the way. It was the same time that I checked out what the statistics were that I listed at the beginning of the show. So, going on, I said, I have a YouTube channel. I report the updated science, and remember, I use the word science repeatedly here on purpose. I report the updated science on a live stream every Thursday. You can watch the live stream tomorrow. Link to that along with those words. If you like, I would be happy to take your call or interact with you via YouTube's live chat feature. And these are the statistics. I went over these before. The total Lancaster County population is approximately 319,090. The number of people tested is 78,320 with 6,905 positives. Total deaths today, as of yesterday rather, are 26. Percentage of deaths from those who have been tested is 0.01319%. Deaths of positive tests are 0.377%, and deaths as a percentage of population is 0.00815%. Always go to the third significant digit if I can. As you can see, the science is clear. This virus is not, nor has it ever been, any kind of problem in the Lincoln-Lancaster County area. There is not, nor has there ever been, any reason to send Lincoln's economy into a tailspin that rivals the Great Depression. Now, I'm certain that Mayor Baird is an intelligent woman who is aware of this. Why, then, did she choose to create an unnecessary economic depression? Now, the only reason I can think of is that, like all politicians, Mayor Baird is a power-mad sociopathic narcissist in the textbook sense. And I linked to antisocial personality disorder and narcissistic personality disorder on those two words. I invite you to click those links, particularly the two personality disorders, and examine the symptoms. You'll find that a muff apply that even a layman can see that she suffers from a combination of both. The only action that Mayor Baird can do at this time is to immediately lift any and all restrictions placed on Lincolnites. On behalf of all the Lincolnites being forced into destitution, I must demand that Mayor Baird open the city immediately. Signed, Bill Stone, Systems Engineer, retired. And that's the absolute God's honest truth. There's no reason for any of this to be happening. Drop 2 says, Freedom Fighter 57 says, getting back down here. Drop 2 says, here in Australia, a couple must live together continually for 2 years until they are considered de facto relationship by law. What's in the U.S.? I don't know. I don't know what the, there's common law wife, common law husband. I don't know what the time period is where, they talk about it being common law. I mean, it's not something that's official, but still the length of time means that if you break up or something, there may be financial issues involved and, custody and things like that. But I don't know what it is. Marshall says masks work only if the wearer is contagious. C-19 mask mostly travels on droplets, and the mask does protect, to a degree, those particles getting out at normal velocity. Marshall says, Bill, the number of tests are not number of people tested. A positive test guarantees subsequent tests. Therefore, the number of people testing positive is 1/4 the number of positive tests as a high. Yeah, well, I think when you have almost 7,000 positive tests and only 26 deaths, kind of tells you a lot, doesn't it? Back to without that. Freedom 550 says, you're here in Lincoln too. Oh, cool. Nice to see you, a fellow Lincolnite. Great, awesome. It's sad to see small businesses being put out of business. Yeah, and the people who work for them are on the dole. Dependent on government now. It's terrible. They need to open the city. There's no reason not to. The science is clear. There's no reason that our city should be subject to any restrictions whatsoever. 26 deaths. In 10 months now? 26. That's all. This is a non-issue, and I've said it a million times. I'll mention it for you, Freedom Fire, because I haven't seen you on here before, but I'll mention. It comes down to what's called infection vectors. I mean, what directions can this virus come? Now, it's airborne. So the issue is, how do you get people who are infected coming in and infecting others? So what are the infection vectors? Well, in New York City, where it's actually an issue, they have multiple international airports. That means they're going to have people and goods coming in that are not checked for a damn thing at those ports of authority. They have multiple seaports where people and things come in that are not checked for a damn thing before they come through. They have the highest population density in the United States, which means, if you live in a big apartment building or a brownstone or something like that, where the air is recirculated inside, you stand a much higher chance of getting it. You have tons and tons and tons and tons of infection vectors. Here in Nebraska, We have no. Oh, and there's tourism, of course. Lots of tourism to New York City, except right now. But lots of tourism. Nebraska here, well, we're landlocked. We have no international airports. I think the nearest one is probably O'Hare. I don't think Omaha is an international airport, but you could, connect to one from out of there. That's for sure. We don't have any international airports. We're landlocked. People who come here, we have no real tourism to speak of. People going through Nebraska or on I-80 are basically headed somewhere else, Denver or maybe the Yellowstone National Park, but they stop here only long enough to get gas, or if it's late, stay the night at a motel. They don't come and stay. We don't have all this international stuff coming in and out. We just don't have the infection vectors. We don't need to be locked down. We don't have the infection vectors. But nice to see another Lincolnite here. Great to see you, freedom fighter. Drop of Truth says, traveling from NSW to Victoria, you don't need a CV permit. However, you do need a permit to return to NSW, a get-out-of-jail-free card, maybe. No idea. Marshall's saying, Bill, we should start a community of rational people in Wyoming or South Dakota. They are rational. They are rational. With very few exceptions. South Dakota never had a lockdown. And look at them. They have actual real tourism. There's a lot of agricultural land there, but you get real tourism. People who are going to the like Mount Rushmore, the Crazy Horse Memorial. Frankly, the entirety of the Black Hills Giant Tourist Trap, which is what it is. And they have the Sturgis Motorcycle Rally, where 100,000 bikers show up every year. No mask orders. They're doing fine. Absolutely fine. They just don't have the same infection vectors. They just don't. But yeah, there's South Dakota. I have a lot of relatives up there who are pretty, I talked to one uncle of mine a couple of days ago. We talk politics, and we're on the same page. I know that an aunt of mine is on the same page, cousin of mine. If you ever, you will often see, if you look at my social media, Marshall, on Facebook, there is a woman whom I won't name, who pretty consistently will respond in some way to a lot of things I post. That's my cousin. There's a lot of people out there who are very, and South Dakota's governor knows. I think those colonies actually exist. You just have to be there. You have to move there. Someday I will probably move back to South Dakota. I love South Dakota. I was born there. Spent a lot of time on my grandparents' working cattle ranch when I was young. It's kind of in my blood. I will probably live out the remainder of my life, whenever that happens, in South Dakota. Drop 2 says, it's reckoned that in Melbourne, that 60% of non-chain restaurants, cafes, and coffee shops will never open again, have already said. Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's going to be the same thing in Lincoln. There are places that will never open again. They're just dead. They're dead. We have induced an economic depression that rivals the Great Depression for no reason. And don't think for a moment that our mayor and our governor are so stupid that they don't know it. They are as familiar with these statistics as I am, because all it is simple division times 100 to get the percentages. And they're infinitesimal. And she knows it. So does the governor. They know it. They're just going around grabbing power. That's all they're doing. And it will never go back to normal. Trust me on this, it will never go back to normal. This is what we will be doing for the rest of our lives. We will be wearing masks. Our businesses, our way of life will be entirely at the whim of government officials. This will never, ever change. This is the way it's going to be. My kids will be wearing masks for the rest of my life. My grandchildren, my great-grandchildren, all the way down the line, will forever be wearing masks. Hell, I have a grandniece who's very young, and she's so frightened by the whole thing. She will not go anywhere without a mask. That poor kid is going to grow up being terrified. She's going to go, oh, if you take off a mask, I'm dead. That poor kid, that whole generation is going to grow up being terrified of nothing. I post this from time to time on my YouTube, on my social media. When people go, "Oh, I'm so frightened," I give them the stats, and I say, furthermore, my maternal grandfather was an infantryman in World War II in Europe. My paternal grandfather was in the Navy in the Pacific. These guys watched their comrades fall by the thousands. They faced down death every time they went somewhere. I am not going to sully the memory of those brave men by being concerned or frightened of something with such a tiny impact. I'm not going to do it. Those men were brave. If you're busy worrying about this virus right now and it's terrifying you, think back to the number of people that died just on Omaha Beach during the invasion in Operation Overlord, if you even know what it is, because your school probably didn't teach you. Thousands upon thousands of soldiers went across the English Channel into France in order to invade and take back Europe. Thousands upon thousands of them. Omaha Beach was like a hamburger stand with all these people dead. That's what my grandparents really faced. Real death on a grand scale. I refuse to be frightened by something that in my city has such a tiny, tiny impact. I refuse. And you should too. I don't know what your grandparents were, your great-grandparents, but you go back to a war with real death, where these guys actually had to deal with this on a daily basis. Their lives were on the line every single time, and they watched thousands of their comrades die right next to them. Their best friends shot, brains all over the frickin' battlefield, bodies littered everywhere after a battle. That is something to be frightened of, and they weren't. I mean, actually, I'm sure they were. I'm sure they were. On some level, you got to be scared. But they did it. They walked through it. They worked with all this, horror and death, and they were able to do it. Hell, if they can do that, then I can say, frack it, to a virus that has zero impact in my city. Yeah, you've seen her. Yeah, you know who I'm talking about. Yeah. She and I are generally on the same page. She's very religious. That's the main thing. She's pretty religious. I'm not one of those atheists with a chip on my shoulder. She said a couple of times privately to me that, she really likes me and enjoys my positions and enjoys what I do, but she's fearful for my soul. And I'm like, okay, I appreciate that. She's not going around trying to shove her religion down my throat or anything. Given an opportunity, she will probably try to, do something to change my mind. And I appreciate that. I mean, I may not believe, but I understand that if somebody does believe and they're looking at me and they say you're a good guy, you would belong in heaven. We want to make sure that you're going to get there. That you don't spend eternity in hell. I look at it and I go, well, I appreciate it. I appreciate you feeling that way about me. I appreciate that, you think highly enough of me that you are actually worried about that. I'm not going to change my mind, but for that I go, okay, well, thank you. I appreciate that you, think that highly of me, Dropper 2 says, as for Sturgis, petrol fumes and Jack Daniels obviously kill this disease. Oh, boy. Yeah, Sturgis is an interesting place. I'll tell you, all kinds of stuff goes on there that's just illegal. One year, however, apparently the chief of police got very upset because his 15-year-old daughter had won a bottle swallowing contest. So, you can imagine. Drop 2 says, all team sports have been banned by the Daniel Andrews Victorian government for schools in a radius of 50 kilometers from central Melbourne. I've forgotten exactly what they've done now with I think it's a Big 12. I'm not much of a sports fan. So, freedom fighter, feel free to correct me. But the University of Nebraska at Lincoln has the Cornhuskers, and they are a big draw. During a game, Memorial Stadium becomes, I believe, the fourth largest metro area in Nebraska. It's like 76 1,000 people, and it almost always is completely 100% full. And for quite some time, the Big 12 were saying, no, we're not going to have any games. Not going to have any games this year. And of course, around here, that's a giant loss of revenue, both for the University of Nebraska and the businesses. Growing up, when the Cornhuskers were really, really big, you could go downtown near where the Memorial Stadium was, and it was just a sea of red. I took to the point where when I started driving, I'm like, I ain't going down there on a football game day. Forget it. It's too crazy. Huge loss of revenue for everyone. And bars, food places, restaurants, fast food joints, if they're not playing, it's a big, big problem. I think they have something worked out now where they can play, but they can only allow a certain number of people into the stadium. It's just ridiculous. Most of the people who come there are Nebraskans. Sometimes you get people from the other side, other state and stuff that they're playing. They've been crazy about that, and it's real detrimental. Freedom Fighter 57 says, I had some business in a small town 30 miles from Lincoln on Tuesday and was glad to see not one mask to be found, and the people aren't afraid to talk to one another and shake hands. Refreshing. And you're worried about that too, Bill. Yeah. Tell you what, I will put in here real quick, because you live in Lincoln, Freedom Fighter, let me show you the mask that I wear. Let me do an image, and we'll do Bill's mask. And okay, and then we will add it. I think I have it in my downloads, so it'll be easy to get to. This is what happens when I'm building a new where is it? Biden press Bill Stone mask. There we go. Now I'm going to have to reduce the size of this thing because it's eating up my entire screen, so excuse me while this is what I do to build my various cards and stuff when I've got things on it. Let me throw you behind my webcam so that I can do this. This is my mask. This literally is the mask that I wear whenever I'm going out to something. It is a Halloween mask, a steampunk Halloween mask. It costs like $10 on eBay. I thought I'm not eBay, but rather Amazon. I thought I might get in trouble with this, but it turns out I went to my dentist with it the first time, and the dentist was doing this thing where you had to sit in your car and then phone them from your car to let you know that you were there, and then they would send somebody out to check you in. And you had to stay in the car until they brought you in for an exam room. Well, I was wearing this. He said, he's asking me all the questions. Did you come in contact? Blah, blah, blah. You coughed and blah, blah, blah. And I was wearing this. And he says, I said, is this okay as a mask? And he says, well, does it cover your mouth and your nose? I said, yeah, absolutely it does. He said, okay. I was into my doctor, my GP, just a week and a half ago. I was wearing the thing. She didn't care. This is doctor approved. I wear this because they've got a mask order in place from the governor, and I figure with the statistics this tiny, both in Lincoln and Nebraska generally, you're looking at something that is such a non-issue that, by God, I'm going to be passive-aggressive about it. That's my mask. All right, let me pull this back up because I have windows. I want to see where they are. Freedom Fighter 57 says, I think you're right about Memorial Stadium. It's right behind Omaha, Lincoln, and Grand Island. Yeah, it's 76,000 people. Omaha's about 1 million. Lincoln is actually, when you look at the entire metro area, which is also extends slightly outside of Lancaster County, you come close to 340,000. And then I think Grand Island is around 150,000. And then you take 76,000 people and shove them into Memorial Stadium. It is essentially the fourth largest city in Nebraska. So, yeah. Oh, you like the shirt, too? I don't remember what my shirt was. Oh, the Superman shirt, yes. That's having a hard time fitting me. Can't really go to the gyms like I used to be able to do. I'm seriously considering getting some kind of, $5,000 to $1,000 home weightlifting system. That's what I do to try to do for my exercise. I do weightlifting that is based around it's based right around Arnold Schwarzenegger's bodybuilding routine that he did when he was competitive. I got into bodybuilding. You wouldn't know it to look at me now, but I got into bodybuilding when I was in high school, and I read about it because I'm one of those guys who does that. And I read Arnold Schwarzenegger's autobiography, which at that point was just about him being a bodybuilder and some of the stuff he'd won. Nothing about what he'd done later. And so I based everything that I do off of his routine. Got to the point where my calves were pretty hard and defined. Because Schwarzenegger, unlike a lot of people at that time, paid more attention to his legs. And I remember a girl where I flexed, it was summertime, and I flexed it's still a little bit, I flexed one of my calves, and she touched it, and she just went, ooh. But I'm thinking about getting some kind of home weight system so that I can just do this at home. And it may be okay because it'll pay for itself in the long run. Because otherwise you're paying like $50 to a freaking gym every month. Add that up over a period of years and it'll probably pay for itself. Let's see. Is the t-shirt from the 70s? No. I'm very careful about the t-shirts I get. Yeah, if you run into me, have a unique custom-made one too. Cool. Awesome. The t-shirts, not from the 70s. It's fairly, I don't remember when I bought it. When I buy clothes, I tend to wear them, I don't know, forever. Guys are we have it easier than women. Women, they follow fashions a lot. They have to buy different shoes to match different outfits, things like that. I mean, most men, they wonder, why the hell do you have so many shoes? Well, it's because the outfits that you're trying to keep up with have to have different shoe colors and stuff and styles. So they have lots of different shoes. But the Superman thing, I'm just very careful about what I buy. Because most of the time you have to buy them pre-distressed. Who wants an S shield on their chest that is already faded? That's terrifying. I actually have, if you go to my website, send a link below, syolranch.tv/donate. I have a shirt because I have been so ticked off over the years. I was a real big fan of the TV series The Greatest American Hero, if you know what that is. I think it was a great series. I hope they never reboot it because you'll never be able to get the chemistry between the actors on that. But the only way you can buy these Greatest American Hero t-shirts that have this symbol on it that he had are pre-distressed. Who wants one of those that looks like it's faded? Well, if you go to my website, you can find on Teespring, I have a Greatest American Hero t-shirt that is non-distressed. I have that just because I wanted the damn thing. I wanted a non-distressed t-shirt. You can buy it there too and it helps support me. The whole fashion industry is a con, a Drop Truth says. Yes, it's kind of been a con forever. I mean, if you look back at Victorian England, where you had to have different clothes for different times of day, or it would be considered somewhat scandalous. You had to wear different clothes depending on what class of person you were, what job you had. And if you didn't wear them, it was scandalous. Particularly for women, it was incredibly scandalous. Fashion industry has been horrible forever. The best thing you can say about it now is at least, unlike Victorian England, women don't get, scoffed at for like wearing white after Labor Day or something like that. And they're not having to wear corsets. I've had some experience dealing with corsets because a long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away, I was once an actor. And so we did, period pieces. There was some Shakespeare. I'm no good at that. And, women had to wear the corsets, and I watched them, and, the actresses, some of them could hardly breathe. I can't imagine having to actually wear that stuff on a daily basis, in Victorian England. But they did. They had to. If they weren't, they were looked down upon. It all had to be, very specific and very dependent on the time of day, even. Crazy, just crazy. Glad to not live in that era. But it's certainly true that the fashion industry is kind of a con. You can't just have one set of fashions that'll last like 5 years. Men, we can pretty much get away with wearing anything for a long time. I have jeans that I bought years ago that I can still wear because they don't go out of fashion with men. I have my sneakers. They were a gift from my daughters years ago. I just wear them till they die. Hell, I'm wearing a pair right now of slippers because, as Wilford Brimley often said, I got the diabetes, and I have to wear them with a pair of socks almost all the time I'm walking around so that my toes don't lose their feeling. That can happen with diabetes. The blood doesn't flow well to the extremities, and you can lose body parts because of that. But here's my slipper. This is about 2 years old. All I've done is it tore at the bottom. I guess put a little duct tape on it. Handyman's secret weapon. And I always have. Sitting on a corner of my desk, at least 2 of the handyman's secret weapon. But I don't have to go buying new ones. I don't have to go buying new outfits just because they happen to, somebody decides it's out of style. And one of the things, look back at my chat here. Drop 2 says, curious how celebrities soon shut up when you state how the clothes they promote are made in Bangladesh and Chinese sweatshops. Celebrities are so woke. Who was it? The last Golden Globes award, I forget what it was, who hosted it. Oh man, and he just lambasted them. He said, so you guys have no idea what the real world is like. You're doing things where he talked about Apple has come out with their new streaming service. They've got a show that's very ethical about this, that, and the other thing that's made by a company that runs sweatshops in China. You guys think you're so woke, but in real life you're not. Hell, if ISIS decided to have a streaming service, you'd call your agents. So when you come up here, don't make any political speeches. You have no moral authority to do it. Just take your award, thank your God, and get the frack off the stage. That was awesome. That was just awesome. Loved that. They have no consistency or anything else. Freedom Fighter says, thank God some fashions have gone out of style. 60s striped bell bottoms. Oh God, yes. Wooden teeth from the George Washington era. Oh yeah. Sadly, some pictures of me from the 1970s probably survive somewhere. Men wore shoes, platform shoes. Not huge heels, but about like this. And the clothes that they wore, today you just laugh at. But when you get down to things like suits and stuff like that, that really never changes for men. Sometimes it moves over to being double-breasted. Sometimes it's a 3-piece suit that's common. Sometimes it's 2. But I've got a suit that my father. Came from my father. It's the only suit I have, and I've worn it. I call it like John Wayne did in the shoot. It's my Sunday go to meeting clothes. The last 5 times I've worn it was only to go to somebody's funeral. But it's the only suit I own. It came from my dad. That's just how the fashion has not changed in so long. I don't even know how long my dad had it. Dad, by the way, Freedom Fighters passed away. Drop 2 says, girdles too, Bill. Oh, yeah, people don't have too many children in high society in Victorian England because they were too exhausted after a long time disrobing. Yes, the upper class people in Victoria actually had to have people who were, committed just to dressing them because they had to change clothes all the time. Yeah, Ricky Gervais, that's who it was, priceless. Ricky Gervais on the last 2020 Golden Globes. Oh, my God, go watch that. Try to find the uncensored version. even if it's the censored version, you can still tell because he swears up there. He calls these people names. He says stuff about Jeffrey Epstein. I've forgotten. There was one point where he said, something about not dying naturally, committing suicide, or dying just like Jeffrey Epstein. And for some reason, the crowd went, ooh, and he said, hey, I know he's your friend. Anyhow, he was hysterical. Go watch it. I can't do him justice. Go freaking watch him. Freedom Fighter says, I have duct tape for one of my slippers right now. Yeah, learned that from an old farmer friend years ago. Handyman's secret weapon. Drop 2 says, platform shoes, flared trousers, paisley shirts with collars reminiscent of a nun's coif. Yeah, I was lucky enough that I was going to a very exclusive private school. You may know it, Freedom Fighter. I was going to Brownell Talbot School in Omaha. I could go there because my mother was a teacher, and so we didn't have to pay tuition. But I went there, and we had, uniforms. So really the only thing, it was a suit. It was basically blazer and, good pants and stuff like that for the men, for the guys, and, dress shoes and stuff like that. So the pictures that existed of me from that period, if you got me when I was wearing my uniform, at least, about the only thing you had to deal with was, flared pants and the high-heeled shoes. But otherwise, if you caught me, I guess probably 2 for guys, it was, at least for my age at that point, it would have been, t-shirts and jeans and stuff like that. And that kind of never goes out of fashion. The difference being the flared pants and, that sort of stuff. Drop 2 says, Dame Judi Dench in Cats licking her. Yes. Go watch it. I won't attempt to do that joke. It's too damn funny. Go watch it. Yeah. It's interesting to me. It's interesting to me to look at because, there's a period of time, about the 1950s through the 1970s, when women's clothing was, if you take out the hippies and stuff like that, and the miniskirts and things, women's clothing were fairly utilitarian. And always wonder about whether I should talk about this or not. I've done it lots of times. If you ever caught before YouTube pulled down my reviews of Star Trek Continues. A long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, I was once an actor. And I happened to be doing summer stock at one place one time. And when you do summer stock, not only are you being an actor, but you're also helping out in the crew some way whenever you're not rehearsing or on the stage. For some bizarre reason, and I don't know why, because I had no talent and still don't, they put me on as a costumer's assistant. I have no idea why. Now, fortunately enough, when you're dealing with costumes, most of the time you don't have to be absolutely, it's for stage. It doesn't have to be perfect because you're dealing with somebody, you're far enough away from the audience that, if you have an imperfection, it's not going to notice. So she could toss me, the costumer could toss me 2 pieces of fabric and say, sew this together. And I could do that. I couldn't run the electric sewing machine, but I could sew 2 pieces of the thing together. We did a period piece that was, I think, a Neil Simon comedy or something. But it was written in the 60s. We did a period piece of it in the 60s. And because this costumer was an incredible stickler for detail, I mean, really, I could do the sewing and stuff, but anything that had to be hard or realistic looking for a period, she all did that. She's an incredible stickler for detail. You would not imagine. She ordered, for that play, like 3 pairs of a bra called a Triumph Doreen for every single female cast member. These are very different in terms of today's bras. Let me explain. Today's bras with women are intended to do one thing and one thing only, and that's to show off cleavage. It squashes their breasts together and pulls it up so that they have cleavage. A Triumph Doreen does it totally different. Its whole purpose is to hold the breasts in place while you are in motion. It is radically different. And every single one of those actresses said it was the most comfortable bra they'd ever worn. Then we get on to the late 1970s and early 1980s, and those bras went away in favor of ones that are just showing off cleavage. They became less utilitarian, considerably less utilitarian, and more just about showing off. And that's where I think we really started to go down the toilet in terms of women's fashions. You could no longer rely on certain things and, building around certain types of underwear. You had to, it just got insane. And for a long time, for I guess about 10 years, they had those stupid low-rise jeans that looked terrible on 90% of the women out there, because you have to be just rail thin in order for those things to work. If you're anything like a normal weight, it looks awful. Bring it up to your waist, ladies. It looks a lot better. Trust me, it doesn't matter who you are. Dropper2 said the French invented the bikini. Yes, and named it after Bikini Atoll. Remember Ursula Anderson, Dr. No? Oh, yeah. Well, I remember most of the Bond girls. I stopped paying as much attention to Bond when the current one, the last one, I guess they're going to replace him with a woman. You dolts. Do you not understand the appeal of the Bond movies? The appeal of the Bond movies on one level is Bond is cool. He's very cool. He gets to kill people. He's just very cool. The guys want to be Bond. He sleeps with any woman he wants. The men want to be Bond. A lot of women, like it or not, feminists, but a lot of women would like to sleep with Bond. So the Bond girls work because the women can kind of project themselves on it. Bond himself works because every guy wants to be as cool and have the ability to go and kill people, in grand fashion if necessary. And so they're going to twist that around. Guaranteed. They will bring back a male Bond at some point in the immediate future, because that ain't gonna fly. Let's see. Drop2 says, that's fake news, Bill. Tom Hardy will be the next 007 according to rumors. Well, we'll see what happens. I mean, what I've heard about this current movie is that they have a woman with the 007 moniker, and yet they're going to bring back, forgot the name of the guy who's played Bond for the last several years, who got married. Bond got married. Let me tell you something. Bond did get married one time. There's a movie on His Majesty's Secret Service that's a Bond movie, and it starred George Lazenby as James Bond. It's the only time that he was ever in a movie, and I get why. He wasn't as good as other guys as Bond. But at the end of the film, he got married to the daughter of what started out as an antagonist. And at the very tail of the movie, they're saying, this is great, wonderful, we're together, we have all the time in the world. And then she's murdered by one of, I've forgotten, Blofeld. I think Blofeld's henchman murders her. And that provides him with further impetus to just go back, okay, I'm going to be a spy, I'm going to find Blofeld, I'm going to kill his ass. And really him being more of, I'm not going to be falling in love again. It's too painful. That happened once, and I think that it was appropriate at that one time because of the impetus that it gave him to become a bit more of a womanizer and very much, I'm going to find that son of a bitch and blow his fracking head off, But I don't think you should marry Bond for the most part. He should not live happily ever after. And it shouldn't be a woman 007. So we'll see. Maybe Tom Hardy will be the next one, but like I say, in this current one, they said outright that when 007 is going to be female, and guys, that ain't going to fly. This movie is going to tank real bad. I don't know what you're thinking. It is about 11:45. I'm not seeing a ton going back through my chat, probably because I spent a bunch of time talking about women's undergarments from the early 1960s through the mid to late 1970s, maybe even some of a little bit into the 80s. But that's, again, it's part of how the whole thing is evolved. I watched it happen. You went from stuff that was fairly utilitarian to things the whole point of the clothing is to accentuate body parts and to show cleavage. And that is not in any way actually utilitarian. So, I guess, after all that is all that I have to say about that. I would love to keep this conversation going, so please leave your comments, questions, and nasty remarks. I'll do my best to respond to you. So, that's all the time that we have today for this episode of Tales from SYL Ranch Live, where everyone is entitled to my opinion. And I'm Bill Stone.
Ultimate power in this world has always been one simple thing: the control and manipulation of minds.